When Julius and them appealed, he got expelled after that appeal. Now he's putting himself into a position where he might paint himself out of the ANC, but he could have taken the 3-year suspension and just went out of politics within the province itself.
Meanwhile, Msibi's spokesperson is confident that the party's appeals committee will absolve him. Uhuru Mofokeng says the ANC's disciplinary committee and the provincial working committee did not handle Msibi's matter fairly.
Primarily, we feel like the ANC has rules which need to be abided to. In particular, the constitution of the ANC has Rule 25, which speaks of disciplinary processes. We are of the view that the PDC, the Provincial Executive Committee in general, did not abide by some of the prescribed clauses within that particular Rule 25. And as such, we feel like the handling and the general management of the whole disciplinary processes, if could be scrutinized, could be found wanting.
The EFF has brought an application before the Western Cape High Court seeking an order which, if successful, seeks to pave the way for MPs who've been physically manhandled by Parliament's protection services to sue for damages. The party, which is no stranger to forced removals from Parliament, alleged in papers that they were violently removed by the so-called white shirts from the 2015 and 2017 sonas in a manner that was unlawful and unconstitutional. Kani Mapanga reports.
At this stage, the court is not tasked with questions related to constitutional damages, as that will be considered in Part B of the EFF's application, where it will look to hold Parliament responsible for the payment of constitutional damages flowing from the unlawful conduct that the applicants seek to establish in the current hearing. The question, which will be at the centre of the hearing, is: was the conduct of the Parliamentary Protection Services unlawful, and that the removal of the applicants was executed in a heavy-handed, violent, and gratuitously aggressive manner? Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Further afield now, the Australian police officer investigating Joe Cauchi, the Sydney shopping centre attacker, says the preliminary inquiry reveals that he was specifically targeting women. He killed 5 women and a security guard before he was shot dead by police. The BBC's Phil Mercer has more.
The New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb said videos of the mass stabbings speak for themselves. She believes women were deliberately targeted and that the assailant avoided confronting men. Most of the victims and those recovering in hospital are women. A 9-month-old baby whose mother was murdered in the attack is in a stable condition following surgery. The 40-year-old attacker's mental health will be investigated by a coroner.
Top story, the newly elected mayor of the Ekurhuleni Metro will swear in the newly appointed multi-party members of the mayoral committee in Germiston, east of Johannesburg. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Dodana believes South Africa needs their own style, and we hear from Danny Jordan on Banyana's coach future. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.3 FM in Rustenburg. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
The Saturday. What are you doing to her?
Oh, we're just friends.
What? You were kissing her? Damn it. You're too old. Oh,
Please,
my daughter is only 17 for this.
please.
You'll get a good... Catch me, Errol Ndoto, on the Saturday Play.
Are you a family?
I'm her father, and this is my ex-wife, Mpho's mother.
And him?
No, he's not family. He's just a useless, toothless dog.
Sir.
Catch the Saturday play between 9 and 10 p.m. Only on SAFM.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
And a warm welcome to you. Good afternoon. I trust you are well. I trust you had a good weekend. I trust you reflected on so many things this weekend that got your pulses racing, and perhaps that's what we're going to talk about here on the National Pulse. Probably 4 things I can tell you about that's coming up that you should not miss, right? We will chat about what is being described as World War III. What does that really mean? The TRC, can you believe it? 20 years since the TRC commenced. Well, we'll reflect on that today, that is, right? And then we'll look at the issue of the Daily Maverick, saying they've shut down, but just for today. And what does that really mean as well? And there's more. There's an update on the Senzo Meyiwa trial, as we often do. And there's a big issue about trucks on the road that will really get you thinking about, especially people driving around the roads, about overloading, and that has an impact on the quality of the road. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot more here on the National Pulse from now up to 6 o'clock, and every reason for you to stay connected. And you know that you can listen in on 104 to 107 nationwide. You can also catch us live streaming in audio form or video via SFM radio. Just check it out. But also in audio form too. And if in video, I'm giving you a thumbs up so you know we're there. But also on our YouTube channel. So many ways you can connect with us. And as always, the other way to connect really is to connect via WhatsApp in terms of voice notes or text. Always great to engage with you. 0614 104 107. You got that? 0614 104 107. So every which way you can connect. And by the way, if you are tweeting out and you're tagging us on the X platform, do use, tag SFM Radio, do tag me, Ashraf Garda, and do use the hashtag The National Pulse. Now, it's possible, as we cover some of the big stories of the day, that we could well be missing some of the other stories of the day. Whatever it is, you tell me what gets your pulses racing every time, every moment that we talk about some of the big issues that we need to know about, because I'd love to get in conversation with you about all of those things. First up, we're going to be chatting to the AfriForum organization, because they have an issue around the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, or called BELA, and issues to the point where they may even want to go to court on that issue. We'll get to know about that in a moment.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
The Commissioner made a point about rebates and refunds, which I think has particular interest for the audience. What did he say?
No, he provided that we paid out in total 414 billion rands in refunds in total. And a large portion of that, 120 billion, he indicated that it went into SMMEs. He indicated that there's about 37 billion that went to individuals. We know that these refunds are very important in an economy that is highly constrained. And the Commissioner spoke to about 53 billion rands that we stopped in VAT refunds that were either fraudulent or incorrect.
Johnston Makubu, the SARS Deputy Commissioner.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we're going to chat to Tembisa Fakure pretty shortly around the goings on around Iran and Israel, and certainly heightened tensions in that part of the world. There's tension, I suppose, with regard to AfriForum and where they stand with regard to what is called the BELA Bill. The BELA Bill is the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, and AfriForum, the youth, in fact, is suggesting that if the bill gets approved by the National Council of Provinces, they will take the issue to court because at this point in time they argue that it's undesirable and impractical. So let's find out more about just that. Why so? With Louis Bossaf, who's the spokesperson for the AfriForum Youth. Louis, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Thanks for hosting me on your show.
Thank you. Right. So let's start with this. First of all, you find the bill is undesirable and impractical. Tell me why.
So the bill basically moves the main authority on schools' language policies and other issues away from the school's governing bodies to the provincial education department. And we believe from AfriForum's side that those who know children the best and care for the children in schools the most are the children's parents themselves, represented through democratically elected schools' governing bodies. And when those issues are moved up to the level of provincial education department, there are risks of political motivation influencing decisions rather than just the well-being and the education of the children.
So perhaps let's go back to what's the current situation? What's the status quo now with regards to the education policy of, school A, B, C, D, E? Who decides that, and what happens in practical terms in that school?
So for the moment, the democratically elected school's governing body, consisting of parents, have the final say on a school's language policy, meaning whoever the parents are elected to the governing body, they get to decide how many children are admitted to the school and what the final language policy of the school is.
Okay, so when you say language policy, just explain, in practical terms. I mean, some languages are compulsory, right? So where are the optional issues around language policy that resides with the governing body?
Yes, that means language of tuition and also the languages allowed to be spoken on the school ground, which for most instances there aren't any prohibitions on what language you can speak outside of classes, but for the language of tuition, it is in practice in most South African schools either English single medium, Afrikaans single medium, or Afrikaans and English dual medium.
Okay, so you're saying if the bill is passed, you have a problem with it and therefore will take it to court to achieve what aim?
To protect the constitutional right of mother language education. Because we've seen in recent times past people such as Panyada Lesufi, while he was the provincial MEC for education in Gauteng, speaking out against Afrikaans education. And we believe we are right in our suspicions that if some politically motivated figure is appointed as provincial head of education, such a person might decide against an Afrikaans or dual medium policy for a school in favor of English single medium, and in effect robbing Afrikaans parents and their children of their right to mother language education.
Now, the Basic Education Department, in pushing this bill to be enacted as law, I mean, they've provided motivation, right? What have they, in terms of their motivation, wouldn't it be the case that we think we know what is right for the majority of people in the country? Isn't that a fair assessment? They've been elected in that position anyway.
We believe it is possible to make certain amendments to the current education legislation and fixing some current problems without hindering parents' rights or children's rights to mother language education. So we would be quite happy if certain clauses of the current bill are amended.
Such as? And which clauses are you referring to?
Specifically, the clauses which give the final authority to provincial education departments on issues such as language policy. We also are looking at the clauses referring to homeschooling, in which is not the main issue for AfriForum, but AfriForum is for the most part in favor of schools in the heart of communities and sending children to schools. We are not promoting homeschooling as such or as a better option than traditional schooling, but we believe that parents should have the right to homeschooling if for whatever reason transport or geographical location or whatever reason visiting a traditional school is not feasible for parents, while the current version of the Bella Bill would require of each set of parents to require prior approval for homeschooling instead of continuing with homeschooling and later receiving approval for that.
Is it, you made the point that you want the parents to, the governing body, which means the elected body that elected by parents, to have those powers, right? The converse may be that, isn't this under the guise of having the powers, but what you really want is simply to protect language of a minority of people in the country, and that's your motivation?
Well, we believe each minority in the country should have equal rights to education in their mother language. So it is not a case of AfriForum wanting to suppress other languages in favor of Afrikaans. It is simply stating that where there are currently Afrikaans options available, we would like to maintain that instead of reducing the amount of options only to one, which would be English.
What about the belief that, you've got a Department of Education which is put in there by national government based upon an election, which, as we know, the next one comes up in a month's time, and that is a reflection of the will of the people. So if the will of the people puts in a certain party that is then governing the country, and they then seem fit to put out a policy like the Bella Bill to say, let's enact it into law because we think this is the practical way to achieve that, why would you need, isn't government the ultimate governing body of a school as opposed to the governing body of the school?
Well, our main view on this is that the will of the people should be enacted through more than just a single vote every 4 or 5 years, or how many years if you include municipal elections, that apart from casting your vote at each election, you should have other opportunity to enact your will or the will of the people through direct democratic input, such as electing school governing bodies, and taking part in public hearings or whatever. There are many mechanisms of enacting the will of the people, and simply saying the government was elected and the government decided on the Bella Bill is not really or is less of a reflection of the will of the people.
And finally, you're suggesting that you will take it to court. Do I take it that if it's beyond a threat, that means you've worked out that in terms of the practicalities of going to court, it's a case it's a winnable case or not?
Yes, well, we simply believe that the current version of the Bella Bill is unconstitutional, and we would like the courts to point out the specific clauses which aren't in line with the Constitution, so to through the courts, make sure that the necessary amendments are made.
Let's see how that plays out. Thanks for your time, Louis Boshoff, the AfriForum youth spokesperson. Certainly they're opposing the Bella Bill as it stands and saying if it gets passed into law, well, they will take it to court because currently that will mean removing the powers of medium of instruction from regional communities based upon, let's say, the demographics from that community away to national government, and they oppose that. They say it's unconstitutional. In fact, they're suggesting as well it's undesirable and impractical. So what do you make of it? You tell me. Call in 086 000 2032. You can also WhatsApp in voice notes or text 0614 104 107. Love to hear from you, but also want to hear some practical solutions then. If not the AfriForum version, if not the Bella version, what's your version? Let's get our fingers on the pulse on that issue. We talk about Iran, Israel, World War III in inverted commas in a moment.
It has been over 20 years since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission issued its final report, recommending over 300 cases to be investigated or prosecuted. Truth Be Told tells the story of the TRC by looking at the poignant cases of the Pila Portia Ndwandwe story, the Beki Mlanjeni story, the Ntombi Kubeka story, the Topsy Madaka story, in which the truth has not been told and no one has been held accountable for their gruesome killings during apartheid. Channel your best South African documentary this March on Truth Be Told, Mondays at 9 p.m. only on
So, a lady from Air Officini just turned 55, and although I'm still a spring chicken, there's a part of me that envies her, especially since she now qualifies for a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account with capital guaranteed. Talk about FOMI, huh, voice man?
If you mean FOMO, then definitely boss man. And she can earn up to 12.6% interest. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app in less than 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Come closer. Over here. Man, oh man, do I have something to tell you. Huh? You know what would happen if you weren't here? No SABC Sport, no Skim Sam, no Uzalo, no Deal or No Deal, no Too Hot to Be Single, no family meetings, no radio, no nothing. Just Dololo, silence. But you, my friend, you make it happen. Because you pair your home and business TV license. Now we can Deal or No Deal Celebrity, Mobango, Hectic 99 and Footspurter. So please keep on keeping on and do the right thing. So we can make new memories and tell stories for the now generation. SABC TV licenses. Pay yours, make a difference.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Tell you what, you're on any social media platform the last 2 days, then you see that World War III was trending and continues to trend. We're talking about Iran versus Israel, and the only reason it's being titled World War III, I would guess, is that there's a sense of a global fallout because of that. So all the more, what comes out of that absolutely impacts you and I. So let's talk about that with Tembisa Fakode, who's a senior research fellow at AfroCID, which is the Africa-Asia Dialogues. Tembisa, good talking to you as always. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. So help us understand when there's been this hashtag World War III, is that over speculative, over dramatic or not?
I think it is over dramatic. The attack by Iran of Israel over the weekend, it was an agreed move by Iran and the allies of Israel. So in other words, before Iran sent those 300 plus drones and missiles into Israel, it did forewarn the United States and some of the Western countries that it was going to do that because of two things. One is internal pressure that Iran faced after its embassy was attacked on the 1st of April by Israel in Damascus. But two, Iran has got the right to defend itself. But what, of course, is interesting this time around is that this is the first attack of its kind. It's unprecedented that Iran attacked Israel directly. It often uses proxies, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen or Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Palestine and both Gaza and in the West Bank, or sometimes Hezbollah. So this time around was the first time that it's done so. But it was very calculative, measured, and even the timing during which this attack occurred, it was at night. And for some of us who were observing this, when we woke up the next morning on Sunday, it was back to business as usual.
So you're saying it's unprecedented, the first time it's a direct attack. You've made the point already about the attack on the Damascus, the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Is this a tit for tat? Is it unprecedented because Iran has responded directly to the attack on that embassy, or is it something bigger?
Well, it's unprecedented because Iran has responded directly. Israel has attacked Iran a number of times before. And it has attacked Iranian installations and assassinated a number of people inside Iran, but Iran has never directly retaliated to Israel. So this is the first time that we saw Iran sending rockets and drones into Israel.
So if it's not their modus operandi to do that normally, why this time then?
Well, two things. This time around, there was pressure domestically. The Iranians wanted to see their government doing something about it because the embassy in Damascus, or embassy of any country anywhere in the world, is regarded as part of the sovereignty or territory of whatever country it may be. And this time around, the embassy of Iran in Damascus is a property and a land that belongs to Iran. So the Iranians were insisting that you attack the embassy, you are taking us direct. So that's the first point. The second point is Iran had no choice but to save face. It has to show the world that, it's been threatening to retaliate on other occasions. And this time around, I think it had no choice but to retaliate, firstly, to save face and also avoid embarrassment. But importantly, to prove to the world, particularly in the Middle East, that Israel cannot go on and do whatever it wants without repercussions.
Now, I cast my mind back to South Africa's own position in terms of South Africa's domestic problems in terms of service delivery across many, many sectors. And therefore, when South Africa took Israel to the ICJ, it was seen by many as a face-saving exercise to say, hold it, we have problems at home, but we can punch above our weight globally and therefore support us. Many then speak about the domestic problems that Iran has. There's been constant issues around civil disobedience. There's been human rights accusations against the Iranians all through the last year. Does that come into play at all?
I don't think this time around is the case. This time around you had an unprovoked attack by Israel of the embassy of Iran, and 7 very senior members of the Islamic Guard were killed in Damascus. So Iran had to react to this. It had to retaliate on this unprovoked attack by Israel. So I don't think it's connected to Iran trying to stay away or try to, move away from the attention away from what's happening domestically, particularly in terms of the suppression of basic rights, etc. I think this time around they had to do it because of the domestic pressure. But importantly, everybody else was watching what Iran was going to do. This is not the first time, as I've said earlier on, that Iran's top brass, particularly military brass, have been killed and assassinated. This time around, they were killed inside the embassy, and Iran had to do something. Of course, nothing serious happened. Apparently, 99% of those drones and rockets that were sent were intercepted by Israel and its allies, including France, the UK, and United States. But symbolically, it was key. Israel, I think, will think twice henceforth before it does anything against Iran.
So, what about, and therefore, to what end do you think that this attack on Israel, in response, will achieve for the Iranians?
Well, first of all, the Americans have made it very clear that they are not going to support Israel if Israel decides to retaliate. That includes the UK and France. But symbolically, I think this was very, very important. Imagine if there was no other 3 assistants from the US, French, and the British to come in assistance of Israel. Certainly, some of those drones will have landed somewhere. So I think the message that's been sent henceforth is that Iran can reach Israel, and without assistance, Israel's property and infrastructure will be hit should Iran decide to do it again, or if Israel decides to attack Iran. Iran is certainly going to retaliate. No. That's one. Number 2 is we also saw the importance of the region. Overnight, business was interrupted, particularly the supply of oil and gas. The flight infrastructure and airline infrastructure and scheduled flights were all interrupted because everybody else was trying to avoid the airspaces of Jordan, Iraq, Israel, and others. So it's a very important part of the world. And I think, again, the other message that was sent is that should there be a conflict there, protracted conflict outside Gaza, you are likely to have an impact, business impact and economic impact throughout the world, and I think the Americans are very aware of that.
Absolutely. We on to news time. So just in 30 seconds, has the Israelis now indicated that they will attack and the fact that the allies of Israel have suggested they will not be party to attack. How significant is that in terms of understanding where they stand in terms of this ongoing global conflict?
Well, we know why Benjamin Netanyahu did it. Benjamin Netanyahu did it because of trying to take attention away from Gaza. But now he's on a back foot because all of his allies have basically said that they're not going to be part and parcel of this. And Iran has said it was not interested in escalating. So anyone who's going to be seen to be escalating at the moment is going to be Israel, and I think they put them in a much more complicated position.
Okay, so I'm thinking about a playground fight. It could say a case of one person attacking the other. The bully then fights back to say we both are very strong, and they're saying now it's all fair and square and nothing further. So whoever throws the next punch, they would be seen as perpetrators. It's a fascinating development, but also worrisome as well. Tembisa Fakude, as always, appreciate your input. Certainly got us thinking there, as he always does. Tembisa Fakude speaking on behalf of his position as the Senior Research Fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogues, AfriCID. Your thoughts, your comments on World War III, you tell me. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Greg Hoos.
Thank you, Ashraf. In a quick look at the headlines, Arise South Africa's accused the IEC of breaching a section of the Electoral Commission Act. The newly elected mayor of the Ekurhuleni Metro east of Johannesburg will swear in the newly appointed multi-party members of the mayoral committee today, and Israel's allies are urging it to avoid any escalation after Iran's missile and drone attack. A full update at 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Eskom Pathleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Mood Street. In Bedfordview, the N3 northbound has a stationary truck on the ramp to the N12 east at Gululis interchange. The N3 northbound has a stationary truck at Van Buren Road, and the N3 northbound has a crash reported after Geldnes interchange that's causing delays. In KZN, the M4 northbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions at Congela. The N2 southbound is slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 in both ways has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions in that Cliffdale area, and the R620 is closed in the central Margate area due to storm damage. In the Eastern Cape, the R394 has protesting reported at Papeni. The roadway is blocked, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In Mpumalanga, the R536 has protesting reported. That's community unrest between Hazyview and Krugergate, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions there. In Cape Town, an update from Metro Rail with regards to the Southern Line. There's no trains available between Muizenberg and Fischhoek, and that's due to storm damage. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Kromboom Road exit. The M3 is queuing at Rhodes Drive. Hout Bay Main Road is queuing between Constantianek and Dyser River Road, and Turfel Road in Newfields is slow moving near the M7 Jakes Hartwell Drive junction. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, let's talk sport. What's your big story?
The big story is that Banyana's head coach Desiree Ellis, her job is safe. This is according to SAFA President Danny Jordan. Jordan says that Banyana's failure to qualify for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris will not lead to Ellis' sacking. After Banyana lost to Nigeria 1-0 on aggregate last week, there were calls from certain sections for Ellis' position as the head coach to be reconsidered, but Jordan says that she's here to stay.
No, our future is secure. You see, South Africans, you see what happened in the team. If the team, today the team wins, they are very happy. Tomorrow the team loses, they want to break down the house, destroy everything. And then they will wonder why the hell did we break down the house. We must just be calm, relax, understand football is a game. There are two teams on the field, and one will have to lose. Particularly in the final match, there's penalty shootout, but there must be a decision. One must win, one must lose. There's only one place there in the Olympics, and it's not to be for South Africa. As painful as it is, we have to understand that and to move forward and bold.
Tell you what, many people, with judging on the sentiments, generally, not just the qualifiers, would say, is Danny Jordān's job safe? Okay. Let's move on.
No comments. Elsewhere, Everton have officially launched an appeal against their 2-point deduction for a second breach of the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. The appeal hearing over the second point deduction is expected to take place in the next couple of weeks. In rugby, there's some Varsity Cup action today in the first semi-finals. Maties host UFS Shimlas at the Danny Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch, while NWU Eagles entertain UCT at the Fanny du Toit Sports Ground. And the kickoff for both games is at 4:45, 5 and 7 o'clock, respectively. In basketball, the Oklahoma City Thunder settled a historic contest for the top seed in the Western Conference on the final day of the NBA's regular season. For the first time in the NBA, 3 teams had the same record after 81 games at the top of their conference. The Thunder thrashed the Dallas Mavericks 135-86 to clinch top spot heading into the playoffs, and then defending champions, the Denver Nuggets, also won the sealed the second seed, while the Timberwolves lost. In golf, recently crowned Mr. Champions Scotty Scheffler has maintained his lead at the top of the world golf rankings. Scheffler claimed a second green jacket in 3 years and a third tournament victory in a little over a month after finishing 4 strokes clear of Ludwig Berg at the Augusta National. The 27-year-old, who is currently expecting his first child with his wife, says that he has no plans to ease up on the course.
Yeah, I'm glad I brought my stroke average, my putting average down on 18. That was nice. Down to 5 strokes, and 2.5 is my average, so that's not bad. No, it's hard to put into words how special this is. It's been a long week, a grind of a week. The golf course was so challenging, and to be sitting here wearing this jacket again and getting to take it home is extremely special.
That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in at the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Top Sport.
Baka and Leverkusen, they could just win it this weekend.
Yeah, there's a saying in Germany that is saying that Bayer 04 Vizekusen, which says they always came second. They never made it first. So that's why I'm quite happy that they hopefully this year are going to be the German champions in the Bundesliga. So,
and they've had a good run overall.
As well.
I think a lot of people are happy. I will be happy when Leverkusen will win this season.
So. And they deserve it as well. They play nice soccer, they have good individuals, they function as a group, they have a great coach, so it's good to watch.
Top Sport on SAFM. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Love the fact that people, whoever you may be, around the country are able to engage with us and have strong views on a range of issues. We've had some WhatsApp saying, has AfriForum ever taken a white person organization to court? I'm not exactly sure about the Bella Bill, but as long as the DA, AfriForum, etc., has the same misguided opinion on the Middle East, I can't take them seriously on this Bella Bill issue. But why would you do that? I mean, just think, you can't mix them all up. They have a view on on the Middle East and you don't like that, but they may have a different view on the ballot bill, and you need to judge it on its merits, right? That's my thoughts. Anyway, Ashraf, it is wishful thinking to expect the Zionist criminals to attack the Islamic Republic of Iran without the help of the West. And remember, if the warmongers from the West took such a dangerous decision, then we will see the surprise of our lives if the Russian Federation would be forced to support Tehran. And I don't think that the Western warmongers are prepared for such a confrontation, and there won't be a third world war from TG. Strong words from TG late in the afternoon. Let's get further thoughts here. There are callers, and we welcome them. You can call or you can WhatsApp voice note us. You have those options, right? Maxwell, however, is online. Maxwell from Polokwane. Hi.
Hi, how are you, Ashraf?
I'm very good, right? You have an opinion on the language bill, right?
I do, and honestly, it cannot be rehashed enough. In fact, I find it both worrying and sad that AfriForum, the DA, and the FF Plus would consistently want to push on this matter of the ballot bill, citing, a flaw, or at least something that has to do with suppression of the democratic rights. Here's what their concern is, and I think if I try to address that with him, it is the issue of language. And they say that it wants to suppress the Afrikaans language, when in fact what it seeks to do, it's the opposite. If we were to talk democracy, their concern is that the language is going to be, put on the wayside. But here's what that bill seeks to achieve. It seeks to achieve multiracialism in schools. It says that the department reserves the powers to determine if the SGBs are not implementing a three-language policy in a school. What does this mean? It means that if you go to a school and that school says, because we are Pedi speaking, the language policy is Pedi and nothing else, then the department comes in and says, no, based on the interest that people have, we are now going to extend to Zulu or Tonga. But that's not what they want. What they want is, come to a school, it's Afrikaans only, take it or leave it. So even if you are African and you don't want your child to be taught in Afrikaans, they're saying, well, you have no choice. The language policy is Afrikaans, and yeah.
Okay, so here's the point. I mean, leaving aside what you think their views may be misguided, the principle of saying, and let's get this right, it's not like the Department of Basic Education or Higher Education have got a fantastic track record with regard to education in our country. We know we've got a bigger education problem, okay? So I'm just putting that aside so you understand it. In that case, wouldn't it make sense that governing bodies who actually manage a school know what's in the best interest of that school, keeping in mind the general demographics of an area? For example, if someone is in Gqeberha, and they've got a choice of one African language, should it be isiXhosa or should it be isiZulu? I mean, the answer is pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. So here's the thing: if you're going to say that in that area, which has mixed demographics, has to serve the interests of one grouping, doesn't that then disenfranchise the other? The department may have its own flaws and challenges, but that's not what this is about. This is about the interests of the general populace, not just one minority.
Okay, got that. Thank you for that. The interests of the nation, in fact, as opposed to one minority. Thanks for that call, Maxwell. Welcome. Further thoughts on this issue. In fact, maybe we're going to talk about the TRC in a moment, but let's get a couple of voice notes as well that people from around the country have commented on. Let's get that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf Garda. This is Salim from Durban. When it comes to language policy in schools, Afrikaans is used as a language to exclude blacks from going to white Model C schools. So in other words, now they're using language to actually make sure that the blacks and Indians that don't speak Afrikaans, that don't come to the school, and therefore it's like apartheid continue. The whites have very good schools with all the facilities, swimming pool and sports facilities, whereas the black schools don't offer much as that. So the language policy is actually used to exclude blacks and Indians.
Got that, Salim. But the question is, do you know that for sure? I understand many may suggest that, as we've even had Maxwell saying something similar. But ultimately, do we know that for sure that that is their number one motive, to exclude, or is it to protect their language? Think about it. Let's get another.
Good afternoon, my very good sir. It's Mlungisi from Durban. No, I just want to talk about this World War III or whatever that is going on in geopolitics. No, it always saddening to see that politicians always put citizens at risk or at stake simply because of greed and power monger, supremacy of high proximity. And look at the casualties, the people that always, it's the civilians that are always the casualties, people who are trying to make ends living all the time, but the politicians are the one responsible at all given time because of greed and power and domination. My. Thanks.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about that is that you may be right, is that no matter what happens in the world, it's very rare that political leadership looks at what's right for the people. And when they have the political power, it's almost like forgotten about the impact that it has on citizens. Having said that, some issues need to be fought, right? I mean, if you just leave things alone and say, well, in the interest of citizens, we'll make peace all the time. What's more important, peace or justice? Think about that. It's very appropriate we talk about that because now our guest will talk to us about the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Today, in fact, is the 28th anniversary of the TRC. Can you believe it? So lots of thoughts around that, in terms of the TRC's objectives, whether it's achieved the objectives, what's been the position in terms of those that, offered a very fair testimony and therefore were granted amnesty. What about those that were not? What about crimes investigated? What are the implications? What is the overall purpose of the TRC? And has it actually helped to effectively shift the nation to that all-important nation-building aim that I think it was set up for at that time? With me is Thapelo Mokushane, who's the Stakeholder Information and Research at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Thapelo, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me.
A very good afternoon to you, and thanks for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. So where you sit, right, what do you say if someone says, what, the TRC was nice and funny-duddy, but honestly, what did it achieve, excepting delay the inevitable questions around achieving justice from what is a very, very unequal society in build-up to 1994?
A lot. We have done a lot, Ashraf, and for the listeners of SAFM. Remember, the TRC was not only mandated to investigate gross human rights violations that occurred between 1960 and 1994. It was also tasked to complete its work by way of making recommendations to Parliament. And those recommendations were speaking to how should all those who were identified as TRC be, or rather receive reparations. So all those who accorded victim status, one, had to receive or received individual reparations. Two, we are also speaking here in terms of erection of appropriate symbols and monuments to exalt all those who contributed in the liberation struggle, and lastly, to also try rehabilitate all those communities that suffered intense acts of violence between 1960 and 1994. But in terms of numbers, Ashraf, what have we done? For instance, I will start right in the middle. Through the TRC Bursary program, as I'm talking to you now, we have provided financial assistance to 8,767 learners towards their basic education. In addition, we also have 1,896 students to enable them to obtain further qualifications at public higher education as well as other training institutions. Not only that, we have a symbolic reparation in the form of exhuming, handing over and reburying all those who died, who were reported missing to the TRC. Yes, so we have done a lot in that regard as well. And in terms of numbers, as I'm talking to you, we have exhumed over 180 people who died during the liberation struggle, including those who were judicially executed at the gallows or on the death row.
So I hear that. I mean, what you've done, you've played a role as a TRC, and that's great. But let's look at it in broad speak, okay? If the objective was to uncover the truth regarding gross human rights violations from the period of 1960 up to 1994. Has the TRC achieved that?
To a certain extent, yes, and that's also work in progress. First thing, Ashraf, that we need to recall is that majority of South Africans who were affected by gross human rights violations did not know what happened to their loved ones before the TRC was established. So the coming into being of the TRC and particularly holding its first hearing on this day 28 years ago was very significant to all those who were affected by not knowing what had happened to their loved ones. So it created a platform for perpetrators to apply for amnesty. In the process of applying for amnesty, perpetrators had to do full disclosure, had to demonstrate that those they killed, they did so because it was politically motivated, and it should have occurred between 1960 and 1994. That way, many people who were affected by disappearances and the killing of their loved ones ended up knowing exactly what happened to their loved ones because before the TRC, they did not know what had happened. The inquests that were conducted before this democratic dispensation held no one accountable. It was mainly through the TRC that many people came to know what happened to their loved ones.
I think that part we must concede, because you're right, then people did come forward. I think the big issue is, what about those that didn't come forward? I mean, what do we do about them?
The TRC recommended that those who did not come to apply for amnesty should face prosecution. That is where we are at today. And of course, acknowledgement was made that there has been delays in the prosecution of TRC cases. But good news is, as we commemorate 30 years of democracy and freedom, as well as marking 28 years of TRC anniversary, its first hearing, today the NPA has allocated 15 prosecutors supported by 32 investigators based in various divisions to deal specifically with TRC matters. Now, a total of 137 have been registered for investigation. There's a lot of work happening behind the scenes.
Okay, because, when you said work in progress, I mean, the problem, and I say that respectfully, when people say work in progress, often it means like, just be patient. Things are not quite happening the way it should be, right? So you mentioned work in progress. You also mentioned delays. So why is this so important an issue, still an issue of work in progress and susceptible to delays, when it's that important to where our country was in the 1990s and beyond?
Look, mechanisms had to be put in place, Ashraf, to ensure that when whatever we implement in line with TRC recommendations is done appropriately, done correctly. So remember, the TRC submitted its first report in 1988, and it subsequently submitted the last report, which is volume 6 and 7, in March 2003. Of course, there was waiting time, and once that had happened, we had to put applicable regulations in place to enable us to effectively implement all the TRC identified recommendations. That is the case.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the last part. Just repeat that last sentence.
Yes, what I'm saying is that, remember, there has, of course, been a passage of time because we had to wait. When the first TRC report was released in 1998, which is volume 1 to 5. And then the subsequent TRC report consisted of volume 6 and 7 in 2003. And after that, we had to put in place, we had to promulgate, let me rather put it that way, we had to promulgate applicable regulations to enable us to implement all the TRC recommendations effectively, and that is what has been happening.
Okay, and the last thing, you mentioned the NPA now has come up with support for prosecutors, right? The NPA themselves have admitted that they've fallen short in terms of their other work as well. So it's a huge problem, right? So here's the thing, right? When you now gather speed in terms of what's next, what's your number one priority for the TRC going forward?
To continue implementing all the outstanding TRC recommendations. Like I already said, right now that we have thousands of those who applied to be assisted with TRC bursary. Many more are waiting, are in the queue we are accepting them for admission and assistance each and every year. We continue to exhume all those whose remains have to be found in line with the TRC recommendations, enable the families to attend spiritual repatriation and conduct symbolic burial in respect of those whose remains could not be found because of how they were killed by the security branch apparatus under apartheid era.
And that's where we...
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's where we can leave it. Tapelo Mokushani, Director, Stakeholder Information and Research at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So 28 years into the TRC, what's your opinion on the TRC? When you think about the TRC, what do you think and what do you feel? Tell me. You can WhatsApp, you can text, voice note, you can also tweet us using, that hashtag, The National Pulse. Let's move on to an ongoing issue that is of national importance, and that's the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, right? So the defense in the Senzo Meyiwa trial has informed the court that there are outstanding funds to pay for their own expert, and therefore, they're unable to cross-examine the ballistic expert Chris Mangena at this stage. The trial, as you may remember, was postponed 3 weeks ago to allow the defense to prepare for the cross-examination of Mangena, who has linked a gun found in possession of the accused number 3 to the Meyiwa murder. So 5 men are on trial for the murder of the former Bafana Bafana player who was shot and killed in 2014. So it's 10 years ago, right? Defense counsel Charles Mnisi said although the family of the accused has raised some money, it's not enough to pay for their ballistic expert. So what does all that mean in terms of the ongoing issue of this trial? With me is Pearl Magubani, who's the SABC News reporter. Pearl, appreciate your time and thanks for joining me on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, and to the listeners.
Thank you. Right, so, you've heard my intro. Where do we stand today?
Well, instead of calling the ballistic expert as to, per your intro, the defense said they just needed more time to get some response from the Legal Aid Board with regards to the invoice that will go to their own expert. And therefore, that testimony that by the ballistic expert, Chris Mangena, has been stood down for now. The state then went on to call Sergeant Mohane, who is one of the investigating officers. He did take the stand during the trial, within the trial, and he's one of the police officers that was responsible for the arrest of accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi.
Okay, and what came out of that?
Well, he spoke about cell phones that were allegedly confiscated from a cell that Ntanzi was occupying, as well as a cell that accused number 5, Ntuli, was occupying in Mpangeni at the time. And these are cell phone experts that Colonel Stein went through the data linking some of the suspects via conversations or phone calls that they had allegedly made to each other. And one of the cell phones actually linked Kelu Kumalo as to having some conversation with accused number 5. However, the defense has denied that these cell phones were confiscated from the accused at the time. One, Nduli alleges that if he had a cell phone when they said that he had it in the cell, he would have contacted his family. One thing he told the court was that since his incarceration in June 2020, he spent weeks not being able to inform his family about his whereabouts. And he says that if he had a phone, then he would have told them immediately that he was in prison.
Mm. And to go back to the initial point about the defense, unable to have the funds to effectively pay for the trial, so therefore for their own expert, and that compromises them. What did the court say about that in terms of, how much time do they then have to rectify that situation in terms of raising the funds?
Yes, Judge Ratamafateng, raised the issue that Chris Mangena took the stand last year in August already, and by then, they had said that they wanted to consult with their expert, and given the fact that the accused are on legal aid, it means that they're unable to afford, the court proceedings and would not have money to have raised those funds. They should have foreseen that, and he questioned as to when exactly did they know as to the fact that they can't afford the services, as they should know the rates that these experts charges. And given the financial situations. They should know all of that, and they wouldn't have wasted the court's time and would have found out all this information during recess. And in fact, last year, straight after Mangena's testimony.
Okay, and that's where we can leave it. Pearl Magubane, SABC News reporter. Thanks for that update on an ongoing story. And that point made, it's 10 years now. Like, at what stage do we get to a situation where justice is seen to be done? At this point in time, endless delays, and that's a huge, huge problem indeed. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Arise South Africa hauls the IEC to court and a call on Israel over Iran attack. Good afternoon. We begin with election news. Arise South Africa has accused the IEC of breaching a section of the Electoral Commission Act. According to the section, if a registered party that has submitted a list of candidates hasn't fully complied, the Chief Electoral Officer must notify that party of its non-compliance. The party alleges that the IEC neglected to do this and only alerted the party of alleged defects in its submissions on the 27th of March, when the objections period had already closed, when it ought to have done so on the 18th of March in accordance with the election timetable. The IEC alleges that Arise South Africa failed to upload its regional candidate list and therefore cannot appear on the national list. The parties hauled the Commission to the Electoral Court for the court's intervention in the matter. Counsel on behalf of the party, Dalia Mpofu.
Let's assume that something went wrong. Let's say that they had picked up that you've paid so much money, but your original list is not here and so on. That's the section that prompts what must happen on the 18th of March. And they didn't do that. So this is another reviewable error, so to speak. That means they breached Section 28.1 anyway. Instead of telling us that there's an error, they actually told us that there's no error because they put us on the national list. That's a clear legality review where the IEC has simply failed to comply with 28.1.
The newly elected mayor of the Ekhululeni Metro, Nkosindampile Kakaza, will this afternoon swear in the newly appointed multi-party members of the mayoral committee in Germiston, east of Johannesburg. He was elected during a council meeting last week after the removal of Councillor Sivuyile Ngongwana through a motion of no confidence vote. A 13-year-old girl has been raped at Seleteng village in Limpopo. Police spokesperson Hlulani Mashaba says the girl was on her way to school when the suspects grabbed her and forced her into a car.
According to the report, the girl was walking to school in Seleteng village when a grey Toyota Tez with 3 occupants stopped next to her and one of the suspects grabbed and forced her into the vehicle. The suspect covered her face with a cloth, forced her to drink a spiked drink until she passed out. The victim alleges that when she regained consciousness later in the afternoon, she realized she was raped and heard the suspect discussing about trafficking her. She then jumped out of the moving vehicle and fled on foot.
Meanwhile, the Limpopo Social Development MEC Nandini Dalane has condemned the incident, saying gender-based violence must be curbed.
As a community, we need to be in solidarity and together take a stand against these acts of criminality. Together we have the power to bring to a halt gender-based violence. These incidences occur in our communities, and working in solidarity, we have the numbers, and with the will, we can rid our communities these senseless attacks of women and children.
Israel's allies are urging it to avoid any escalation after Israel's missile and drone attack against it. The British Foreign Secretary David Cameron has also called for calm.
A country has had a massive attack from a dangerous and malign actor in the region. They are considering, the Israeli cabinet has been meeting already to consider that. Our advice is don't retaliate. Take the win. Recognise Iran has suffered a double defeat. Defeat as almost all their weapons were shot down, and defeat because the world can now see their true nature.
Top story, Arise South Africa has accused the IEC of breaching a section of the Electoral Commission Act. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khoes.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Motsepe urges players to save money and South African athletes have the last chance at securing Olympic qualification at the Durban International Marathon. More details at 4:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM. SAFM 105.2 FM in East London. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. In Bedfordview, the N3 northbound, there's a crash after Geldnys Interchange, and the N12 R24 westbound has a crash just before Giluli's Interchange. All lanes are open and traffic is queuing on both routes. Republic Road westbound in Randburg is slow moving, and that's towards Malibongwe Drive. In KZN, the R620 is closed. That's in the central Margate area due to storm damage. Bel Air Road has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions near Chief Albert Lutuli Hospital, and Armstrong Avenue in Mhlanga is closed north of Ridge Road Circle for stormwater culvert works, which ends the end of April. In Cape Town, Turfel Road is slow moving through Nova Park. Veltervreden Drive is closed between Cedar Avenue and Spine Road. AZ Berman Drive is where crashes reported at the R300 highway, and Main Road outbound is slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.1 FM in Johannesburg.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, let's talk about e-tolls. What's the state of play there?
1 second before midnight, will officially myself and the minister switch off the e-tolls and making this part of our roads history, and ensure that whoever that was not using or was protesting against e-tolls will start a new chapter of rebuilding our roads as not e-tolled, but as ordinary roads that can be utilized by anyone, anytime, whatever moment they want to utilize them.
Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. So there we are at midnight, e-tolls finish and cloud.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I wonder what's your pulse rate like when it comes to some of the issues we've discussed today regarding the TRC, regarding Iran versus Israel, regarding the ongoing Senzo Meyiwa trial, regarding the issues of languages that AfriForum has brought up once again, and perhaps including Daily Maverick, who effectively shut down for the day, not forever, just for the day, to make the point about the fact that if independent journalists are not funded, or journalism is not funded, well, then they will also be effectively finished and club. We'll talk about that just now, but you can add your comments, and you can do it in one of many ways. Calling in 086 000 2032. You can WhatsApp in voice notes or text 0614 104 107. You can also tweet us. Do tag the SFM radio accounts on the X platform, as Opa has done. Opa said, "Good afternoon, we are together. I'm listening from Tabazimbi, Limpopo, with the audio channel." Well, great. Certainly we got you connected, Opa, and much appreciate that. Right. Let's talk about another really important issue, which is the issue of trucks on the road. And I'm not talking about accidents. That's another issue. I know about 4 youngsters who died in Johannesburg over the weekend. Just a horrific accident. But just the issue of heavy trucks and the impact that heavy trucks have on the quality of the roads. So SANRAL, South African National Roads Agency, they say that trucks are not complying with the country's regulations. Let's find out more about that with Leighton Lesiani, who's the project manager at SANRAL Northern Region. Leighton, appreciate your time and thanks for joining me on the National Pulse.
Very much, Ashraf. Thanks for this opportunity you offered us to come and speak to you and your listeners. Yes.
Thank you. So let's get this right. Are you saying there are 2 issues? There's a problem with the roads in terms of decay, and the big problem is being caused by overloaded trucks. True?
Yes, indeed. There's a problem with overloaded trucks on the road, whereby because basically they accelerate the damage of the road by virtue of them exceeding the legal limits. And they also pose safety risks where they themselves can fail in terms of brakes and so on because they are overloaded or exceeding their design requirements, and steering issues and just road handling challenges that they may have, and which result in accidents.
Okay, so how big of a problem is it? I mean, I think it's beyond isolated then.
Yeah, it is a big problem where there is no overload control. But on many of our routes, we have way bridges where we do the enforcement in as far as we can, where we direct these vehicles to the centers, largely on the main routes like the N3 to Durban, N1 North Pretoria to Beitbridge, the N4. We have a couple of centers there where we police overloading in collaboration with the provincial traffic department.
What about, the flip side of that, which is that trucks overload because they can get away with it?
Yeah. So what happens is in some routes, some provincial routes and others where there is no strict enforcement, yes, you get those operators who will obviously exploit that gap and try and maximize on their profit and take those longer routes while they overload their vehicles with the aim of making a profit in excess what is their competitors are charging, So that is indeed a problem which we have and which the unscrupulous operators exploit, yeah.
So what are you going to do about that? Because, here's the point. If they exploit it and these things allow it to continue, then I'm just going to suggest that although it's a problem and the roads are being damaged and we really are fed up around the issues of potholes and everything else, right, that this issue will continue if there is no policing, if there's no efficient prosecution and policing around these issues.
Yes, there is a lot of work being done in that regard where we are expanding our network of this or methods in terms of deploying latest technologies in screening most of the regional routes that are not having static way bridges. And the officers can be deployed at a minimal cost to screen on those vehicles and on those routes, and direct those vehicles that are suspected to be offenders to our main way bridges for weighing and prosecution there.
So finally, where do you want to see this ending? What for you is the end goal that allows the trucks to do important work on the road of transporting and mainly around commercial issues, because that's really important for our economy, right? At the same time, to ensure that they do not damage the roads by overloading. What for you is the win-win solution here?
Yes. So what we try and achieve is those that do comply at our way bridges. We've deployed the latest technology whereby we merely just screen them, and it's about less than a minute that they go. But those that do not comply and overload, they undergo the process of being weighed in a static way bridge, and if they don't comply, they are led to a holding yard where they have to correct the load and they are fined until they can be released. So they pay a price even heavier than the ordinary fine. But those that do comply, we encourage them to maintain that and for their own benefit, whereby they don't get their time wasted and incur unnecessary costs for transportation due to delays that they may encounter at the way bridges by virtue of not complying. Yes.
And again, and just to end with you, one thing is overloading and maybe the initial findings to the truck driver, but the reality is they work for a company. So there's a business that allows the overloading to continue. So what level of again, policing and prosecution goes to the actual owners and those in charge, the management of companies, as opposed to the end user, which is the truck driver?
Yeah, as the traffic law stands, so the one who drives the vehicle is the one who is caught and prosecuted. However, other sections of the traffic laws do allow that the operator as well can be prosecuted if they happen to be frequent offenders that are picked up through the system. So that in itself is meant to also discourage the operators from doing that. And indeed, as I've said, the delays, once you are caught at the weigh bridge, the delays can be as long as half a day that the truck stands there to correct the load and be released again. And many that then undergo that, they don't try and repeat it.
Okay.
How costly it can be.
Let's leave it at that. That is a story we need to just follow up. Certainly, we need to speak to business people about what their policy is around overloading. If you're a business person that has your trucks on the road traversing the country, what's your policy around loading and overloading? Do you have a policy about it, or is it a case of getting away with whatever? Or are we fishing in areas where we should not fish because it doesn't exist? You tell me. You can call, you can WhatsApp, you can text. All those options are available to you. Thank you for your time. Most appreciated. Leighton Lesiani, the project manager at Senrail in the northern region. Right, we're gonna talk about Daily Mavericks shutting down for the day. But before we do that, there's been a flood of comments from a range of people. In fact, here's another that I think is really important. I think it's P. Mashilo saying, I'm extremely fuming on the doomed amoeba sentiments of the man from the TRC. He's insulting the families of the victims of the violence from the injustices of apartheid government. How many arrests were made on perpetrators? Did they implement the recommendations exactly as they were declared by the commission? That's the big questions. Right, let's get to some voice notes.
Good afternoon, SAFM. Good afternoon, my brother. Mr. Athran, I'm sorry for your name is a little bit harder for me, but I will get used to it. Regarding the trucks on the road, they are there for purpose. The trucks are transporting everything we use in our household, in our workplace. It's transported by trucks. There is no way. The railway is no more. In the case of the trucks damaging the road, my brother, that sentiment is a blue lie. You know what? Where I'm staying in location, I've been there for more than 21 years or so. I never see the trucks roaming around our location. But guess what? We don't have roads, only potholes. Thank you, my brother.
All right, there we are. So certainly someone raising the point, we have potholes, and that's a huge issue. And again, I mean, that's not just even across the provinces, but certainly in the cities, it is damaging cars. The costs are just massive. Any further comments on some of the issues we've raised today? Let's hear.
Hi, Ashraf. David from Alberton. Personally, I don't see world war. I see European war. It's time we stopped terming all these wars as world wars, whereas Africa is not involved. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's not a world war, it's a European war, but it spills over. And if you go back to the World War I and World War II, they were certainly not actually fought around African issues, but were they fought on African soil? North Africa comes to mind, and of course it spread around the world as different countries got involved in choosing sides, and therefore world war. Will it happen? I really sincerely hope it does not happen. Anybody wants to call in and talk about World War III and downplay that, or give us solutions to how we can solve that perpetual problem in the Middle East? I certainly want to know. There's another WhatsApp. Let's hear that.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you, Mafuta? Ashraf, I think the world finds itself at a cliff because of two reasons. The US has got so much power that it can dictate anything or any direction it wants world affairs to go. Two is because I think there are people who are making money out of these conflicts. Because really, if peace was the only way to prosper, I don't think there was anyone who is going to engage in conflict. Ashraf, can you help me? How do people come to the extent of deciding that we are going to war? If peace really is the way forward to prosper or to prosperity?
Okay. Yeah, all right. I think that last point about how people go to war when there's peace and prosperity is really telling. And again, well, that's the point, isn't it? How do you find the lasting peace in all issues? The show is called The National Pulse. Love that you're connected to the show. And feel free to connect and engage in multiple ways on a range of issues. As I croak, as a slight voice croakiness that just developed here. I know many of us have been battling with that, but fine, we'll try and sort that out in a moment. Let's talk about the Daily Maverick, okay? We'll talk about that right after this.
Ready Steady Cook South Africa. The Thriller Minute Daily Treat is sure to spice up your Monday to Friday menu from Monday 18 March at 7 p.m. If you and someone you know think you're ready and steady to cook along the esteemed chefs on this juicy television show, you can WhatsApp the producers on 068-675-2542. Channel your inner 5-star chef with Ready Steady Cook. Weekdays at 7 p.m. only on.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
For the first time in 30 years, the ANC is set to lose its majority. Opposition parties have united as the multi-party charter for South Africa.
A strong democratic alliance with a proven track record
Can anchor a new government that serves the people.
But a new government that works is only possible if you vote for it. Let's unite and rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
The Spanish princess tells the riveting story of Catherine of Aragon, a woman who has an eye on the English throne, and nothing and no one is going to stand in her way. It's a vivid and captivating reclaiming of Catherine's story, which has historically been overshadowed by her infamous marriage to King Henry VIII. Tune in to drama, plots, romance, the twists and turns. Stay for the suspense. Channel your inner royalty with The Spanish Princess. Starts Saturday the 6th of April at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Where are you listening to the show from around the country, or around the world, in fact? Because, people listen nationwide, 104 to 107. You can catch us on streaming live in video form as well as in audio form. And I do know there are people from the Southern African states to North Africa, English speaking, and around the world who connect to the show. So my question to you, where are you listening from? What's your name? Where are you listening from? And what is it you enjoy? You can tell me, and you can, probably the best way, just WhatsApp, text, or voice notes. We'll take those calls, right? Okay, let's talk about Daily Maverick. So if I look at their website, or rather their Twitter account or X account, it's got there, the poster says Daily Maverick has shut down. So and then it says for 24 hours, okay? Without journalism, our democracy and economy will break down. Journalism helped save South Africa. Now we need your help. So what's the issue around that Daily Maverick story? It's a case of journalism under absolute threat, or a fabulous marketing campaign. Heather Roberts with me, editor of the Daily Maverick. Heather, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. So perhaps you may want to answer that question. Fabulous marketing campaign because DM shut down is trending, right? Or is it there to highlight the enormous issue around the risk for journalists in our country, or journalism in our country?
I'd say it's a bit of both, but we are deeply, deeply concerned about the risk to journalism, not just in our country, but globally.
Okay, so you say a bit of both. Let's talk about the campaign itself. What did you put out and why?
Well, we shut down our website today. and we sent out press releases and communication on X and on Instagram, explaining why. We've also linked on our website and on all those other platforms. If you want to do something to save journalism, you know, if you're a business person, click here, and we explain to you how you can help. And then if you're a reader, click here and explain how you can help.
So how big a problem is it?
Look, it's a huge problem, and I think anyone who's been watching what's been happening in the Competition Commission hearings will realize that this is the problem that affects every single news business in South Africa. It's a problem that has been caused by the change in platforms, by Google, Facebook. Most of the advertising revenue actually goes there and is no longer going to news media. And remember, the business model of particularly independent media has been advertising, and if you're a newspaper, cover price. And when that advertising is spread across globally by the newspaper like Google, it's minuscule compared to what it would have been, for example, in a newspaper.
Okay, look, so we are aware, I mean, there's major shifts, tectonic shifts in terms of funding and in terms of how, you know, whether it's newspapers or online media exists. I get that, right? But going back to the point that was made earlier, so how much of this is a Daily Maverick problem, and insofar as this marvelous, and I say marvelous, marketing campaign, in fact is a cry for help for the Daily Maverick?
It's a cry for help for journalism in South Africa and the world. Daily Maverick has always pioneered its journalism and has always been maverick in its approach. And we made a decision that, look, no one realizes the threat that journalism is under due to the collapsing market and business model for journalism. And so we wanted to actually make a very bold statement and say, like, this is what happens when there is no more journalism. Journalism is important for you and our democracy. It's very important to actually be a watchdog over the powerful. And if we collapse because of a lack of funding, because of the business model failure, then we are not going to be able to serve our purpose to help our democracy and you, our readers, or citizens of the country we live in, and, you know, for other media all over the world. Now, it's not just about Daily Maverick. We made it very clear. It's about all media organizations.
Now, Daily Maverick in particular, however, has had a business model that's a bit different to other online sites in terms of there's no firewall, my understanding, but there's certainly an encouragement for crowdfunding. I mean, has that succeeded?
So it's not crowdfunding. I'll explain what the Daily Maverick's model is. So we have a number of different revenue streams. We're not only reliant on advertising. So advertising is one stream. We also have what we call, it's very different to subscription or crowdfunding. We have what we call a membership program. We have very loyal Daily Maverick readers who we call our insiders, and they can contribute between 50 Rand and upwards every single month to keep our journalism going. So, and they do this because Daily Maverick insists that news and good quality journalism should be available to everyone. So those people who are actually insiders are making the news free for those who may not be able to spend 50 Rand or 200 Rand.
And I mean, you also have the advantage of other funding, like I think, through the Open Society Foundation, right? I mean, they fund many South African organizations.
I haven't finished. We've got, as I said, a number of revenue streams. We're not reliant on, we don't put all our eggs in one basket, basically.
Okay.
The third revenue stream is philanthropic funding, like the Open Society Foundation and anybody else who wants to, for example, ABSA sponsors our climate change journalism, called Our Burning Planet. So we also run events. So we have a number of different, we have newsletters which have advertising on them. We sell merchandising products and books. We have a book section. So we have a variety of different revenue streams.
As I would think most businesses should have, right? Here's the last thing. In terms of your overall concern for the support of journalism in South Africa, maybe even worldwide, I think that's completely understandable, right? But my issue here is this. today's campaign, which has been hugely successful, I mean, you've had your editors, your writers, all who are effective influencers using their social media platforms. Why did it not extend beyond the Daily Maverick? Why not then rope in people like myself and others to say, hold it, come on, this is a major national, international, global problem. Let's all do something on the same day.
We decided to actually get the ball rolling, and the response from our colleagues in the industry has been, hey, let's make this a national and global campaign. So we welcome collaboration and cooperation with everyone else in the media, and we've already had, there's a lot of support. I mean, there's also a need to support, for example, the Press Council of South Africa, because the less funding or revenue that the different media companies have, the less support there is for very important structures like the Press Council that actually keep journalism honest and credible.
Okay, last thing, we're on to news time. I made the point from the outset. I mean, clearly DM has been trending, so there's huge awareness for the online site, right? Has there been any telling response from a person or people of significance around the greater issue of saving journalism that you'd like to share with us in 30 seconds?
Look, I just think that for me the most important people are the ordinary people. And the response to ordinary people has been so amazing that we've actually increased our insiders by 800 members just in this one day, who actually realize the importance of journalism. So I wouldn't actually, and I think the important people, the people who are running businesses, should actually pay attention to the ordinary people who actually do value the role that journalism plays in our democracy.
And that's where we leave it. Heather Robertson, the editor of the Daily Maverick, alive, not dead, just for the day, but alive. But is journalism dying? It's a big question we should be asking in a world of changing business models. Let's get the news headlines now, just gone 4:31 in fact. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. A quick look at the headlines at this half hour. The defence in the Senzimiwa murder trials informed the court that there are outstanding funds to pay for their own experts, and therefore they're unable to cross-examine ballistic expert Chris Mangena at this stage. Arise South Africa has accused the IEC of breaching a section of the Electoral Commission Act, and the first ever criminal trial of a former US president is about to begin in New York. More on that story and other news at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Edenvale has a stationary vehicle just before Giluli's interchange that's causing delays. In Bedfordview, the N3 northbound has a crash after Geldnys interchange, and on the N12 R24 westbound, a crash just before Giluli's interchange. All lanes are open, but traffic is queuing on both routes. In the Eastern Cape, the R394's protesting reported at Papeni. The roadway is blocked, so you are to expect delays and diversions. In Mpumalanga, the R536 has protesting reported. That's community unrest between Hazyview and the Kruger Gate, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In KZN, the M4 has roadworks with traffic restrictions at Congela. The N3 eastbound has a stationary vehicle before Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 both ways has roadworks with traffic restrictions in the Cliffdale area. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 southbound is queuing towards the N2 highway exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
I have to tell you before you talk about sports, Arsenal supporters were thrilled that Liverpool lost on Saturday. And then did they cry on Sunday night?
Yesterday, Manchester.
And Man City are suddenly like from 3 to 1st and heading for the home straight.
They were so happy. The City fans were so happy yesterday. But we'll touch on Arsenal just a bit later. For now, let's start off with CAF President Patrice Motsepe saying that his previous call for professional footballers on the continent to save their money is very important, especially for difficult days once they have retired. The former Mamelodi Sundowns president has recalled how in the past he's seen footballers at the Brazilians drive expensive cars, but once they have retired, they had nothing to show for it.
And I've always encouraged players, because football is a short career. Whilst you play, you have to make as much money as possible. And I encourage them to take some of that money and invest it for the future when they don't play football. And when I was president of Mamelodi Sundowns, I go to where the players train. I see Mercedes-Benz, very expensive Mercedes-Benz.
Muito caros.
I see BMW, very expensive BMW.
Muito caros BMWs.
I see very expensive, in fact, even Ferrari. And of course, it's fine for them to buy these wonderful things, as long as they take some of the money and invest it for the days when they don't play football. Because I've seen many players who were our heroes when they played football, and they've got nothing when the football days are over.
Well, Motsepe says that through the new tournaments like the lucrative African Football League, the idea is to retain some of the best talent in Africa and pay the players well. Elsewhere, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta has urged his wounded Arsenal stars to show character and leadership after their Premier League title challenge suffered a hammer blow in yesterday's 2-0 defeat against Aston Villa. The Gunners are second on the log, 2 points behind leaders Manchester City, with 6 games left in their bid to be crowned English champions for the first time since 2004. However, they are facing yet another year of missing out on this title race, and Arteta has issued a plea for his team to stick together.
We don't have any other solution. If you want to win championship, if you want to be there in the Champions League, when you have these moments, you have to stand up. If not, that means that you don't have a quality that is very, very necessary, and now is a big test for us.
We'll just have to wait and see. Then in athletics, the Durban International Marathon offers South African athletes their last chance at securing Olympic qualification on home soil before the June deadline for the Paris Games later this year. And newly appointed Olympic marathon coach Mike Mbambani has asked the runners to use this opportunity. The qualifying standards stand at 2 hours and 8 minutes for men and 2 hours 26 minutes for women. This event is scheduled to take place on the 28th of April, integrated with Athletics South Africa Marathon Championship, which marks the final 42.2 kilometer race before the Olympics on local soil.
We've got events in South Africa. There's nothing better than doing it at home. And I always make example on the British runners. You hardly find them running in US. They run their races in Britain. If they want to qualify, they qualify in Britain. We've got our own events in South Africa which can actually make our athletes improve. So probably an SA champion is eligible to go to Olympics.
That's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
In fact, we've got people WhatsApping Clint from Richards Bay saying, well, my TV screen was asked, where are you in the country, where are you in the world listening to SAFM, and how are you listening, on radio, online, you tell me. So Clint says, my TV screen broke, but luckily we still have sound. Okay, so I listen to radio now most of the time on OpenView 614 from my cell phone on FM or streaming when I listen to it. That's Clint from Richards Bay. Well, the key thing is, Clint, is you are listening, and therefore you are connected, and you've got your fingers on the pulse of the nation thanks to what you do. Making every effort to listen in. Right. Let's talk about the markets now with Makwe Masilela, who's the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good chatting to you as always. Thanks for your time.
A pleasure, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Good afternoon. Right. You want to talk about a significant play with regard to serious real estate?
Yeah, these are the owners and operators of businesses and industrial parks providing conventional and flexible workspace in Germany and UK. The guys are expecting to deliver another 12 months of strong operational performance, increasing rates and occupancy. And in Germany, rent roll benefited from greater occupancy as they focused efforts on selling what they call vacant space and improving tenant retention. And in the UK, they continue to achieve above inflation rate increases in rent, though at slightly lower levels than in the recent past. But as with Germany, the guys have successfully focused their efforts on occupancy, where they delivered an improvement, and the group's overall rent roll is up 8.2%, and also acquiring some businesses helped, and the cash collection remained robust at 98%.
Also, you want to pick up on local and global markets, right?
Yeah, and I think we need to realize that global markets showed some signs of stability as market participants awaited further developments in the Middle East, and that's following that attack by Iran on Israel over the weekend. And there's some speculation that the conflict will remain contained after Iran said the matter can be deemed concluded, and the US said it won't support an Israel counterattack. And remember, investors are already rattled by sticky inflation and the prospect of higher for longer interest rates. So any escalation of the Middle East crisis might inject fresh volatility into markets, and the dollar remains elevated, weakening the likes of the rand, and also mixed commodity prices are not helping. And Nigeria's March consumer inflation accelerated to a 28-year high, that is from 31.7% to 33.2%. The strength of its currency is yet to reflect. Remember, the guy's currencies lost 43% in the first 2.5 months of this year because of devaluation, but has since strengthened 34% since mid-March. And metal prices rose after the US and UK imposed new sanctions on Russia's supplies that caused prices to spike, mainly aluminum prices, which surged by a record 9.4%, and copper was up 1.4%. Ashraf, Russia supplies 6% of the world's nickel, 5% of aluminum, and 4% of the world's copper, but other commodities are under pressure as we see that oil prices retreated as markets downplay the risk of a broader Middle East conflict. Brent crude is down 1% at $88, and the safe haven demand eased a bit, and a firmer dollar also took some shine off the yellow metal. Gold is down 0.4% at 2,333. Platinum is down 2.6% at 963. The Dow, just like S&P, up 0.4%. The DAX up 1%. CAC up 0.9%. But the FTSE is down 0.1%, with the JSE down a whooping percent, dragged mainly by our resources, which are down 3.8%. Industrials down 0.3%, but our financials are up 0.3%. And the rand, unfortunately, is 19.02 to the US dollar, weakening against most major currencies, 23.71 to the pound, and 20.22 to the euro.
Well, that's great. Good talking to you. We can do it again tomorrow. Makwe, thanks for your time. And that's with the Market Watch. We'll have another Market Watch coming up in about an hour's time. But we're going to move on shortly to Election Watch, with a fascinating story in terms of a person who's put together a story about the positivity around South Africa, which I think is really important. In terms of comments from people, Solly saying, "Hi, Ashraf, great show. I'm in Europe listening to SFM thanks to SABC Plus." So that's the app, SABC Plus. And maybe you need to download that app. Not maybe, you need to download that app. Please do so, right? There is more. There's another one, Gert saying, listening from Tabanchu, okay? And there's another saying, "I'm following this Iran-Israel war. It is scary, and if you want to take this war from a biblical point of view, is this the start of bad things to come? Is this that the Bible warns us about? I don't know, guys, but whether it is or not, it's still scary. So I will be all ears on what happens next." Another thought there. Okay, and there's another one from Tumelo, who's in Nelspruit, listening and just making points about AfriForum, about the language policy that AfriForum seeks to oppose. It seems AfriForum only rises when, according to them, something is a threat to minority interests. Firstly, government always hopes to create middle ground, where the majority, blacks, would appreciate being accommodated in well-resourced schools inherited from the former regime in English instead of Afrikaans, although this still amounts to a compromise, as English is not their mother tongue. Township schools have English as an instruction medium, either way, for all subjects. So government is fortunately right. Why do you say fortunately? Fortunately right about this bill for once, right? There's a range of callers. People certainly want to get to a range of issues off their chest, and we'll get to them first. To Pretoria we go. KG on the line. Hi, KG.
Hi, Ashraf, how are you?
I'm very good indeed. Right, Israel, Iran. What do you want to tell me?
You know, it might not be now, but at some point in the future, we are going to have an escalation of the war. Be that to World War III escalation, I'm not sure, but at some point it is going to happen. And Israel has been sitting in the pot for quite some time now. If you can see from 1954, the number of red flags that Israel has actually gone about doing is just actually stay up war in the Middle East. Their main objective is actually see their borders beyond the Euphrates. Up until that happens, we must just prepare ourselves for endless war.
How do we prepare? How do when I say we is the country, South Africa, and then we is in you and I, how do we prepare?
The country now, and because we are a global community as well, the route that side is the major route for oil, economic affairs as well. One way or the other will be affected. I don't know if you want to stay neutral as we've always been saying, but one way or the other we are definitely going to be affected. As to how we prepare for that, I wouldn't put it up to government. I would put it up to individuals in the country.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thanks for that insight from KG preparing, at some stage, prepare for war. Colin in Cape Town wants to talk about AfriForum. Go ahead, Colin.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Ashraf, I want to ask you a question I've been wanting to ask you now. You had a TV program on Sunday evenings, didn't you?
No, I used to host
years back or something.
No, I used to host a special assignment TV show.
That's right, my special assignment. Yeah. I used to watch it on Sunday. Yeah, I was just wondering if you're the same Ashraf, but it can only be one Ashraf.
Now all the 100,000 other Ashrafs in the country are complaining. But go ahead anyway.
Yeah, AfriForum. AfriForum. They're not protecting the schools. They are, as you correctly said, they're protecting their language. I went to a school from preschool, primary school to high school. It was English and Afrikaans, all mixed. There were English teachers, Afrikaans teachers. Now, it's not a matter of saying they want just an Afrikaans school. I'm sure they don't mind if there's Afrikaans and English in the school. You see, everybody knows, the majority of the black people in this country want to see Afrikaans disappear off the map.
No, man, I don't think you can say that, you see.
No, not the majority.
You just said the majority.
I should have used the word certain or percentage. They want Afrikaans to be gone. But you know something? They are trying to keep the language going still. And they know that this country, this government, is trying to get rid of Afrikaans. And Afrikaans, to me, did a world of good at school. Because I'm bilingual now, you know what I mean?
Okay, but isn't that the point? They're not trying to get rid of Afrikaans. They're trying to ensure that other languages, like you, bilingual,
correct,
the same way like isiXhosa, isiZulu, and many others, can also be used.
I'll come to the other point. Why don't they train more isiXhosa, isiZulu teachers and combine them also in those schools? You can have English, Afrikaans, or isiXhosa in one school. We had it in my days in the 60s. Afrikaners, they had Afrikaans teachers. English had English teachers. And the Afrikaner teacher used to come over to the English and teach us Afrikaans, and the English went over. Vice versa.
Okay, Colin, let's leave it at that. Thanks for that. I think the big issue, and some schools do that with 3 languages, the biggest issue is resources. There's just not enough money to do all of that. We're already battling with schools and tables in many schools, especially in rural and township communities. Let's get another issue about battling Daily Maverick, journalism in South Africa, around the world. And Tlantla from KZN, hi.
Hi, my brother. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. Good to hear from you. Go ahead.
You see, to speak about it, journalism, it's like protecting our constitutional rights. Firstly, because with journalism, we cannot exercise Section 15, freedom of speech. We cannot exercise Section 2, access of information. We cannot exercise Section 192, public broadcasting. So, the media is so important. And when it comes to funding, in the book of South African Media Policy Debate of 1990, written by Professor Erklo. Media should be drawn in two sources: advertising and government budget. I do not understand why are we still arguing the issue of funding the media and the journalism and protecting them after 34 years, where such a tremendous debate in this book, or South African media policy debate.
So what should happen then?
Media, in fact, the advertisers and the government should play their role without any question.
But you see, government playing their role means then it moves away from what Daily Maverick is talking about: independent, not government or state-owned media, something that's completely independent. Funded advertising will follow the audiences. I mean, that's what it is. Kantla, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Right, there we are. Again, I love the fact that we're getting a wide range of opinions on many, many issues, and you can certainly pick up on those too and tell me even further about the state of journalism in South Africa and that point, should government get involved in funding? I think the answer is obvious. They can't do that with everybody, and wouldn't want that. But the other issue is where else do they get their funding? Is it advertising? Is it some innovative events that they get involved in? Is it these friends or insiders, as Daily Maverick has done? Or is it this subscription model that many others have, like Times Live, for example, where you pay, otherwise there's paywalls and you can't really access those without actually paying for it? What do you make of all of those things? Feel free to comment on that and any of the other issues we've raised that has certainly got your pulse boiling, I would think, today. Let's talk about the elections with a guest who has a positive view on South Africa's election.
Join Smile Foundation for a movie night under the stars featuring Sing 2 on Saturday, 20th of April at Old Ed Sports Grounds. To book, visit smilefoundationsa.org. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history. From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
Nali bitsola ka ke bonolo mo agidi bantswang ba re ke Miss B morara Miss T mo ahludi the Bonnie B Bonbon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
Top Sport.
Baka and Leverkusen, they could just win it this weekend.
Yeah, there's a saying in Germany that is saying that Bayer 04 Vizekusen, which says they always came second. They never made it first. So that's why I'm quite happy that they hopefully this year are going to be the German champions in the Bundesliga. So,
and they've had a good run overall.
As well.
I think a lot of people are happy. I will be happy when Leverkusen will win this season.
So. And they deserve it as well. They play nice soccer. They have good individuals. They function as a group. They have a great coach. So it's good to watch.
Top Sport on SAFM. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
We're going to have another take on the language issue just on the other side of the news at 5, right? Another comment, Felix in Midrand, a concern for journalism as a principle would cut across the board, including a concern against the harassment of IOL. They never get entertained as IOL in these platforms. Instead, you find the same media being part of a campaign to elbow out IOL as happened with ANN7 New Age. Really? I just wonder. I mean, there's so much more than just you saying what you've said. Okay, let's get to the Election Watch feature, which we do every day in the build-up to May 29, right? So, my guest today is Babu Baiju, who's a former speaker of the Msunduzi municipality and a member of the ANC Veterans League, and he's put together an article in the Witness newspaper, and he in fact says very, very good things about South Africa and our democracy, which I think is particularly important in the build-up to our election. So good chatting to you, Babu, and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. Right. So,
Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Well, your piece certainly got us thinking. Perhaps something you can give us in 5 key points what you've actually said.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I said perhaps you can give us in 5 key bullet points the bullet points of the essence of your piece that you wrote.
Yeah, look, my I gave thought to this. I've been a member of the ANC for we legally became members in 1991, but we've been involved with the freedom struggle for much longer before that. But be that as it may, we got into power in 1994. Now, some people say 30 years is a long time for a democracy. It's not really. I mean, if you look at India is 75 years after democracy. Has it achieved everything that it set out to do on its first election manifesto? No, it did not. Most post-colonial countries have had serious issues in getting through where they want to go. So I think from our point of view, yes, let me admit, as the ANC government, we definitely did not do everything right. We're not in the best place that one wants to be. But at this particular moment, my main point is that we still are the spark of hope for this country. If you look at the other options in the country right now, with the various parties, I think there are 56 or 54 parties on the ballot paper. There's a whole lot of single people parties, not independents, but parties that are just looking for 50,000 votes to get a seat and get 5 years of salary. The ANC is not that. We are here. We have a history. We cannot forget that we are a constitutional democracy. Some might say that we're still traditional, but we're very much a constitutional democracy. And all our functions, all our main institutions of public protection, the Section 9 Institute, all are still very, very intact. The Electoral Commission, I mean, we've had 6 national provincial elections already, on the 7th one now. Mm-hmm. All of them free and fair. The people went out and they voted, without any violence. I mean, you get your normal, bit of violence here and there. But generally, you've had free and fair elections for six sessions. Now the 7th one in 30 years. 6 local government elections already done and dusted. The Electoral Commission is doing its work. As a Chapter 9 institution, recently the DA decided to go to America and ask America to come in and monitor our elections. America told them, no, you have a wonderful electoral system. We're not going to come in.
Well, I mean, I see you made the point that you feel very well protected by our Chapter 9 institutions, right? Tell me why you think that.
Well, look, number one, if you look at the public protector's work that's done by the public protector, I mean, it is her work, the previous public protector, on the issue of the state capture. It is her recommendation that led to the Zondo Commission. And the Zondo Commission came up with, I don't know how many volumes of documents implicating many, many senior leaders in government and even from our own party and even from the private sector. A lot of these cases are in court. Billions of rands have already been collected through the AFU. They have the asset forfeiture unit, so we can't say nothing has been done from that section. Now, recently, the South African Human Rights Commission went out on a public participation thing regarding the July 2021 riots or the July 2021 unrest. I mean, there was a lot of things that, there was a massacre in Phoenix. Obviously, there was no massacre in Phoenix. People were protecting their homes. The reality is that, after a lot of consultation, the Human Rights Commission came back with a draft report that actually gave us the truth. Now, that particular report is a report that's it's basically a wonderful report that is a catalyst for us to go a one nation South Africa without race problems. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over generations. But it's a lovely working document to do. It's come from a chapter.
But therefore, you've written glowingly about the Chapter 9 institutions, as well as the IEC, and as our election as well. But having said that, you and I know that there are so many problems in our country, and they come down to the most basic service delivery and therefore human rights issues in our country, meaning that, if you've got no water, that's a human rights issue. It's not just a service delivery issue. So do you still have the same sense of optimism around that? Because the same ruling party that you've been a part of are effectively governing and have been governing over all these issues for 3 decades.
Well, look, yes, I still do. I have confidence. Like maybe I'm biased towards my own party, but I am rightfully biased. I believe that the party is the only one that will actually use the institutions that we put aside to set us up to actually implement. I mean, just today, I know the president was in Durban with a huge contingency of his ministers, meeting with the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to deal with the water issues in Durban.
But why do you? We got a minute to go. I'm going to push you. Why do you think your party is the only one that can fix the problems when your party has been involved for 30 years and have not fixed the problems? They've caused the problems.
I'm not saying that mine is the only one that can do that.
But you just said that.
Yes, but listen to me now. If you take it in time, place, and context, which other party is going to get a large number of votes in the country right now?
Well,
take the 56 parties, right? Tell me which party. I'm not saying that the ANC is going to get 50%, but it's still going to get the largest share of the vote.
Okay, got that. Let's leave it. Let's leave it at that. He's still going to get the largest share, but will that be enough? Because clearly that may not be the case. The question is which party or parties can get together and form a coalition that will actually work to ultimately sort out the problems for you and I in our country. Appreciate your time. Thanks for raising some important issues, Babu Baiju. Certainly got us thinking, and you can read his piece. In fact, we'll maybe try and get it put up here on our X platform. Just follow SAFM Radio there. He's a member of the ANC Veterans League, and he's written there in his personal capacity. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Issue of funds for Mayiwa murder accused in Arise, South Africa hauls the IEC to court. Good day to you. The defence in the Senzo Mayiwa murder trials informed the court that there are outstanding funds to pay for their own expert, and therefore they're unable to cross-examine ballistic expert Chris Mangena at this stage. The trial was postponed 3 weeks ago to allow the defence to prepare for the cross-examination of Mangena, who has linked a gun found in possession of accused number 3 to the Mayiwa murder. 5 men on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana player who was shot and killed in 2014. Defence counsel Charles Munisi says although the family of the accused has raised some money, it's not enough to pay for their ballistic expert.
His invoice, we realized that the gentleman would not have been able to afford that. Even myself, I could not have been able to afford that, let alone his daily appearance. Then we formulated an opinion that we needed to get an alternative funding, which is the reason why early this year, almost like a month ago, we then approached Legal Aid South Africa. This was not out of our own making.
Meanwhile, Judge Rata Mokloteng says the defence should have anticipated that the services of a ballistic expert wouldn't be cheap.
They postponed it in August to consult with the ballistic expert, and they know that this gentleman doesn't come cheap. You are all practicing lawyers. Yes. You know that. And then 8 months down the line, nothing has happened. Because at the moment, nothing has happened. Can you phone the head of the legal aid board? He must come to court. Okay, now? No, maybe tomorrow.
In election news, Arise South Africa has accused the IEC of breaching a section of the Electoral Commission Act. According to the section, if a registered party that has submitted a list of candidates hasn't fully complied, the Chief Electoral Officer must notify that party of its non-compliance. The party alleges that the IEC neglected to do this and only alerted the party of alleged defects in its submissions on the 27th of March, when the objections period had already closed, when it ought to have done so on the 18th of March in accordance with the election timetable. The IEC alleges that Arise South Africa failed to upload its regional candidate list and therefore cannot appear on the national list. The parties hauled the commission to the Electoral Court for the court's intervention in the matter. Counsel on behalf of the party, Dalian Mpofu.
Let's assume that something went wrong. Let's say that they had picked up that you've paid so much money, but your original list is not here and so on. That's the section that prompts what must happen on the 18th of March. And they didn't do that. So this is another reviewable error, so to speak. That means they breached Section 28.1 anyway. Instead of telling us that there's an error, they actually told us that there's no error because they put us on the national list. That's a clear legality review where the IEC has simply failed to comply with 28.1.
A man has been killed in a mob justice-related attack at Makushane village in Limpopo. Police spokesperson Malasela Ledwaba says a mob allegedly assaulted the victim after they accused him of being the last person to be seen with a man who's been reported missing in the area.
Community members mobilized after they suspected that the deceased, who might be in his early 40s, was involved in the disappearance of Isaac Ishmael Mbeteni, who went missing last month on the 30th of March. The victim reportedly went to the dumping site in Palabora to look for scrap metal, but never returned home. The mob assaulted and forced the deceased to the dumping site, as they alleged he was the last person to be seen with the missing man.
The first ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president is about to begin in New York. The case against Donald Trump gets underway with jury selection. He denies falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to an adult film star. The trial is expected to last at least 6 weeks. The BBC's Nada Tawfik reports.
Today is the formal start of the trial, but it begins jury selection when hundreds of New Yorkers from Manhattan will be gathered here and will be whittled down to just a jury of 12 individuals and 6 alternatives. Donald Trump will be there in court through that entire process. The judge will have them first answer a questionnaire that runs 42 questions long, each question with subsets, and it walks the jury through their consumption of media, if they've ever been a supporter of Donald Trump or attended any of his rallies.
The top story: the defence in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trials informed the court that there are outstanding funds to pay for their own expert, and therefore they're unable to cross-examine ballistic expert Chris Mangena at this stage. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
Coming up in your sports this hour, SASCA confident about Team SA ahead of Paris 2024, and Nadal confirms comeback at Barcelona Open. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N3 northbound in Bedford View has a stationary truck after Van Buren Road that's causing delays. In Kempton Park, the R21 southbound has a crash reported before Pomona Road exit. The N3 southbound in Edenvale has a stationary vehicle before Giluli's Interchange, and the N1 southbound in Pretoria has a crash reported on the off-ramp to Atterbury Road, and that's causing delays. In KZN, the M13 eastbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions at the N3 Paradise Valley Interchange. The N3 has roadworks with major upgrade works between Spaghetti Junction and the M13 Paradise Valley Interchange. The M4 northbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions at Congela, and the M7 westbound is queuing at the Bel Air Waxley Road Junction. In Cape Town, an update from Metro Rail regarding the Southern Line. No trains available between Muizenberg and Fischhoek due to storm damage. The N2 outbound is slow moving towards Bunga Avenue. AZ Berman Drive has a crash reported at the R300 highway, and Jan Smuts Drive in Athlone is queuing at Klipfontein Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays
3 to 6 p.m.
And as you want to get a feel of the national pulse, where are you listening from? Which part of South Africa? Which part of the world? Keeping in mind people listening to the show via radio, and they also listen via streaming live and many, many different platforms. So tell me where you are. What's your name? Where you listening from? I'd love to know. Absolutely. And you can connect with me via WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107 to call in. 086 000 2032. You can also tweet us. Just tag on the SFM radio, well, on the X platform, and you can use that hashtag, The National Pulse. Tag me as well, too. Right, lots more to come. We're going to chat to Arthur Goldstuck as part of a drive, even from our side, to up the issues around innovation and AI and marketing, because we certainly know that the audience definitely wants that. So we'll talk to him about the tech companies in the USA facing a big antitrust reckoning. Not quite now, that will come up later on. However, let's talk about education in our country. We've been chatting all afternoon since 3 o'clock around issues of language and languages. And we know that AfriForum, where their youth have vowed to challenge the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, which is called BELA. If it gets approved by the National Council of the Provinces, they effectively saying, no, the issue of the choices of language in schools must be left with the school governing bodies. Clearly, that's not the position with the Department of Basic Education. So we have another take on this issue with Elijah Mtlanga, who's the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education. Good chatting to you, Elijah. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse. In fact, we're going to connect with him in just a moment. Just time for me to tell you as well that love the fact that we certainly getting people coming up with suggestions of topics that we should be speaking about as well. That's also great, okay? So besides, we may not read them out on the air, but if you have any thoughts of the type of content that you want to listen that will get your pulses racing every single day, basically giving you what you want, then you tell me. We certainly want to know about that, okay? So the best way there is just a WhatsApp, I think a text note would be just great. Okay, we should be chatting to Elijah Mtlanga just in a moment. We'll connect with him not quite right now, but there's some voice notes. People have responded to some issues. Let's play them first.
Hello, Ashraf. Rian here from Pietermaritzburg. I've been a member of a governing body for longer than what I care to remember, and I've just realised how important the SGB is for a school. Not only language policy, but for the governance of the school in a whole. What I don't understand is that the department wants to have their own, put their stamp on all the other, on all the schools, even those running well, because of SGBs, instead of focusing on those people, on those schools that don't have a functioning SGB. Let them manage those schools.
Now that is a very, very interesting call, I would think. Rian, in terms of priorities, is that a priority to effectively govern the governing bodies, or to accept the fact that those schools that have governing bodies, former Model C schools, are doing a much better job, and therefore let's give them the powers even more so than they need? Another thought around that issue. Right, we do have with us Elijah Mtlanga, the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education. Good chatting to you. Thanks for joining me on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us.
Much appreciated. Now, I'll tell you what, earlier on, we spoke to the representative from AfriForum Youth, that's Louis Boshoff. We thought, let's play, a clip in terms of one of the points that he made that I think is the basis of our conversation now. So let's play it first.
Well, we believe each minority in the country should have equal rights to education in their mother language. So it is not a case of AfriForum wanting to suppress other languages in favor of Afrikaans. It is simply stating that where there are currently Afrikaans options available, we would like to maintain that instead of reducing the amount of options only to one, which would be English.
What about the belief that, you've got a Department of Education which is put in there by national government based upon an election, which, as we know, the next one comes up in a month's time, and that is a reflection of the will of the people. So if the will of the people puts in a certain party that is then governing the country, and they then seem fit to put out a policy like the Bella Bill to say, let's enact that into law because we think this is the practical way to achieve that, why would you need, isn't government the ultimate governing body of a school as opposed to the governing body of the school?
Well, our main view on this is that the will of the people should be enacted through more than just a single vote every 4 or 5 years, or how many years if you include municipal elections, that apart from casting your vote at each election, you should have other opportunity to enact your will or the will of the people through direct democratic input, such as electing school governing bodies and taking part in public hearings or whatever. There are many mechanisms of enacting the will of the people, and simply saying the government was elected and the government decided on the Bella Bill is not really or is less of a reflection of the will of the people.
Well, that's the voice of Louis Boshoff, the AfriForum Youth spokesperson. So, back to you then, Elijah Mhlanga from the Department of Basic Education. I mean, you heard those thoughts, but maybe let me start with this, and we'll respond to his comments in a second. The Bella Bill, I mean, what's the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, it is unfortunate, Ashraf, that the focus of the Bella Bill is now on one thing. There are 57 amendments in the Bella Bill. They've got to do with a whole range of things that are in the sector, including making grade R compulsory. Some people are even opposed to that. But let's come back to what the AfriForum person is focusing on, the admission policy. The Department of Basic Education embarked on this process since about 10 years ago. They have had various opportunities through the public participation process to make their input known, and we've accepted that. They continue to object on that particular provision of the admission policy as well as the language policy, because they know why they're doing that. Our intention is to make our schools open to learners of different languages, different backgrounds, wherever they are. The country is experiencing enormous pressure, particularly in Gauteng and other provinces in the urban centers, for space. We need that space. It cannot be that you have a school in Pretoria which goes to Kempton Park. It goes to Alberton to fetch children every morning to come to an Afrikaans-only school in Pretoria every day. Whereas in and around that particular school, there are learners who speak other languages who are seeking spaces there. So we are addressing this matter so that we are able to level the playing field and opening our schools for them to be able to accommodate learners.
So that's an important point. So you're saying that's the status quo at the moment. A governing body that chooses to have, say, an Afrikaans language school can do that at this point in time, and therefore will be able to draw on from a larger catchment area of Afrikaans-speaking people from beyond a geographical region, and that causes a flood into that school from people outside, but still poses a problem for residents around those areas who do not want to be taught in the Afrikaans language as first language, and therefore they can't go to the schools. Is that what you're saying?
We are saying that schools, wherever they are, should be able to take care of the communities where that school is located. We can't be importing people or exporting people just because we are insisting that particular schools should use certain languages. We are saying all languages must be given an equal opportunity using all publicly available resources wherever the schools are. There's nothing wrong with that. But it seems they've got something wrong. I mean, they have a problem with that. And we are saying it cannot be. You cannot deny other learners an opportunity on the basis of language. And this whole idea that we are trying to take powers away from school governing bodies is also false, if it's not fake news. Remember, October 2013, there was a Constitutional Court ruling, a judgment, which said that ultimately the MEC, the HOD in the province has the final say in terms of what should happen in the school, in terms of the admission policy. So one of the key objectives of the Bella Bill is to align the court rulings that have taken place over the years in terms of the impact they've had on the basic education system. So we didn't just wake up and decide to make changes. These changes come over decades of running the system, having parents complaining about various things that we had to crystallize and process and say, how do we address all these challenges?
Okay, so at this point in time, so I need clarity on this, right? At this point in time, yes, maybe Afrikaans is the issue, but it's not. It's all languages, okay? The principle of deciding which language is, dominates in a certain school, do I take it it's done by the school governing body? Now, I'm just saying you could, and then, in terms of the Bella Bill, am I right in saying that will remove the privilege or the responsibility of the school governing body making that decision, because that choice will be made by someone much higher up, as in the Department of Basic Education? Have I got that right?
No, not at all. In fact, it says the bill proposes the intervention of the HOD on the development of language or admission policy. This is not about the taking away of powers of SGB to determine such policies, but to ensure compliance with the country's legislation. So it means that the SGB retains its responsibility in terms of the development of the policy, but it cannot have the final say. It is the department that has the final say, because it is the department anyway that takes final responsibility for all matters regarding schools, from the allocation of resources to anything else that's got to do with that school.
So the SGB can make a recommendation, but the ultimate decision is yours. Doesn't that take away the powers and the responsibilities of an SGB if they can't make key decisions like that?
No, it's not making a recommendation. They determine the policy. So the policy, it will be there, it will be put in place and be applicable for as long as it is consistent with the principle of diversity, inclusion, and making sure that we are practical in terms of accommodating all learners there. We are saying it cannot be discriminatory. That will not happen. That's what we are trying to deal with here. We are saying if you are going to be applying the policies to favor a certain community at the expense of another, that we are not going to allow. So if anyone is opposed to this principle, then it means that their intention is really to discriminate against others, even though they say they're protecting their own language.
So here's the thing. There's a voice note I'll play in a moment. Here's one thing. If the Bella Bill is then passed into law, how would that practically change the way school governing bodies work around languages?
Well, it will mean that the SGB has the responsibility to develop the policy of the school, which will work there. But should the department find, or should anybody find that that particular policy there is being used for the wrong reasons, which has been the case, by the way, from when these powers were given to SGBs in 1996 when the Schools Act was enacted, then the HOD has the right to instruct otherwise, in the interest of the child, in the interest of the learner, in the interest of the community.
And an example of wrong reasons would be what?
No, where learners are told that you cannot be admitted here because the school uses this language only, and if you cannot speak this language, then go find space elsewhere.
Okay.
And you find that there's a growing community in and around the school that speaks a language other than the one that the school has adopted. Certainly, the school would need to adjust its policies to make sure that everyone is accommodated. We live in a real world which is dynamic.
Okay. There's a voice note from a listener who wants to raise an issue. Let's hear it.
Hi, Ashraf. While you have the representative from the Department of Education, please can you get clarity on them, why they are forcing and who's been funding this initiative to push down the throats of parents and schools the syllabus to teach young children in the formative ages, grades 6, 7, 8, about transgender, using pictures in books that are almost border on soft pornography, when it's been clear from all the opposition that I've seen in a newspaper, etc., that the vast majority of people are not in favor of this. What agenda is being driven by the Department of Basic Education, and who's paying for it?
Okay, got that quick response that we're going to wrap up?
No, he's a victim of fake news, this one. It's not true what he's saying. We've issued a detailed statement explaining what the department is trying to do. So we are not pushing down anybody's throat, anything. All that we have done is to empower our teachers so that they know how to navigate around complex social issues that we are facing in our schools, where learners are taking us to court with their parents, saying that they want to feel welcome in a school environment. Which means that as a system, we need to do everything we can to make sure that they feel welcome.
All right. And as I talk, I realize that issue is such a broad issue. We need to spend time on that. Maybe some other time, allocate time that will do it justice. So appreciate your time, Elijah Ntlanga, the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education. I made the point earlier on that we certainly want to pay a lot more attention to the issues around innovation and AI and other marketing trends, because we believe that's really important. So my guest today is Arthur Goldstack from Worldwide Works. As part of this innovation. Arthur, good chatting to you. First time since I'm back. Arthur, do I have you there?
Yes, you have me.
Okay, good chatting to you, Arthur. So we're going to talk about, an issue that should we be concerned about? I mean, it's a USA problem right now, but I gather it may come all the way back to South Africa at some stage around big tech companies facing, a US antitrust racketing. What does it mean?
Thank you, Ashraf. I just want to say it's great to be back on the air with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's been a while since we chatted on SAFM.
Thank you.
Well, what it really boils down to is that the kind of action that the authorities are taking against big tech companies in Europe and the United States can provide a template for the South African authorities to take similar action. So the Competition Commission has already issued a report of findings about the abuse of dominance that we have seen from some of the big tech companies. And what they are targeting is what's called platform companies. In other words, companies that have massive digital platforms that dominate the sectors of the market. And here we need to look at what kind of action is being taken against these companies.
So let me understand this. When we're saying big companies and dominate, what does that mean? How do they dominate, and why is that a problem?
So the classic example is Apple, which has the biggest app store in the world. So to some extent, they control the ability of developers to sell their apps, or at least to market their apps to the user out there. To a lesser extent, Google with their Play Store, but also massive. So between those two, they can dictate what the apps can be sold for, or what can be sold from within the apps. And that alone is already a source of major concern for antitrust authorities, because they believe that Apple is manipulating its app store to favor its own apps and to limit the ability of competing apps to compete with Apple's own apps.
And do they do that? Do they do that? Do they manipulate?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
And does Apple do that? Do they manipulate the apps to favor their own, that forms part of their own app store?
Yes, it has been shown in the past that they, in fact, disfavor their own apps over competing apps. And that's the one aspect of it. The other aspect is that they take a very high proportion of the ticket price, the sale price of paid-for apps. And then they also control the extent to which the owners of the apps can sell products, goods, or further functionality within the apps. And the best example is probably gaming apps, where there are in-game purchases that you can make. But Apple insists that it be made through the App Store and that they get a chunk of it. So there's been a massive war for years now between Apple and one of the major gaming companies.
I suppose in broad terms, it's like how big and how powerful can a company be? Not just Apple. We can say ditto for just about every other global company in the world, right? So having said that, this and U.S. antitrust issue, how is this going to change things, if indeed it'll go through?
Well, what they are suing Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Meta for is on the extent to which they're harming competition, and as far as the Department of Justice in America is concerned, that they're suppressing innovation, and that ultimately has a negative impact on consumers. They're sometimes on very shaky ground there, because if you take, for example, what Facebook has done with, or at least Meta, what they've done with WhatsApp, is to make it a far more effective tool, whereas if you follow the logic of the Department of Justice, you would have expected to see WhatsApp being closed down in favor of Facebook Messenger, but instead it's become the world's dominant instant messaging platform from the point of view of how widely spread it is geographically. No one competes with WhatsApp. So, in effect, Meta has made it a better app. But the argument then is that they're not allowing smaller players to enter that market because they are so dominant.
And I mean, if these antitrust laws or the suite sort of follows through to the end, I mean, do you then see a change in the way we do things? Because what I'm thinking about as we talk is these big companies you've mentioned are as powerful as they are because they're so ubiquitous. They have impact through all of us. So when you talk about WhatsApp, I think like that's my app, but it's invented far away from here, right? If they make less profit and have less say and less have powers, would then the appeal of the companies that own them be less? Meaning, will they then consider unbundling and therefore weakening the companies, weakening the profitability, and therefore maybe weakening innovation as well?
We can certainly anticipate some of that kind of thing happening because the authorities in the United States haven't been unwilling to break up companies to increase competitiveness. And, for example, AT&T, which is one of the biggest networks in America now, was a far bigger company in the past in terms of the share of the markets. But they've gone from strength to strength after that breakup. So it didn't harm them, and it was good for the consumer because there are more competing mobile operators or communications operators. So sometimes breaking up companies is good for competition, but they've got to be very careful how they do it because in certain cases, it's because they are part of a bigger organization that they are so effective. WhatsApp being the classic example. It's Meta's investment in WhatsApp that has made it so much better than it was when they first bought it. The real issue is that they're trying to stop rivals from competing with them in terms of, for example, making apps that you can use for messaging on iPhones because they want their own FaceTime and iMessage to dominate that kind of thing.
That's where we can leave it. They've all played the game Monopoly, I think, a long, long time ago, and that's really the big issue. Arthur Goldstuck, Art2G, I think, on Twitter, or X as it's called now. You can certainly follow him there. Much appreciate your input this time around. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Greg House.
Look now at the headlines of this. The IEC's denied the allegation that Arise South Africa submitted its regional candidate by the March 8th deadline. The defence in the Senzo Miwa murder trials informed the court that there are outstanding funds to pay for their own expert, and therefore they're unable to cross-examine ballistic expert Chris Mangena at this stage. And the former US President Donald Trump is currently inside a New York courthouse as his criminal trial into hush money payments gets underway with jury selection. A full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R24 westbound in Edenvale has a crash before the N12 highway merge that's causing delays. The R21 southbound in Kempton Park has a crash before Pomona Road exit. In Bedfordview, the N3 northbound has a crash after Geldenhuys interchange, and the N3 southbound has a crash near Van Buren Road. The N12 westbound in Eldorado Park has delays, and that's towards Klipspruit Valley Road exit. In KZN, the M7 westbound is queuing at Bel Air Wexley Road Junction. The N3 westbound has a crash just before the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. On the N3 in both directions, roadworks reported with traffic restrictions in that Cliffdale area. The N3 westbound has a crash after Umlaus Road, and the R620 is closed. That's in the central Margate area due to storm damage. In Cape Town, the M3 Philip Khosana Drive outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Koeberg interchange. Valterveerden Drive in Mitchells Plain is closed between Cedars Avenue and Spine Road. Albert Road outbound in Woodstock is slow moving towards Salt River Circle, and Main Road outbound in Observatory is slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So at 3:30, it was Danny Jordan. At 4:30, it was Patrice Motsepe. Who's your big lead today?
Well, we're talking all things Olympics and Team South Africa. And South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee CEO Nozipho Chafta believes that they will release a strong team ahead of the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. This is despite Banyana's fallout at the hands of Nigeria's Super Falcons last week. And with almost 100 days to go to Paris, Chafta has confirmed that the final list for Team SA will be released in 3 weeks. Now, the only team that is remaining will be the Rugby 7 squad that still needs to compete to qualify, resuming on the 21st of June in Monaco.
Yeah, we almost 100 days to the Olympics. We're going to France, Paris 2024, for both the Olympics and the Paralympics. Some of the teams have already qualified. There are some of the teams, we're very saddened by the fact that we could not qualify Banyana. We were really looking forward to it. We're now waiting for the Rugby 7s. We will only know in June whether they qualify or not. But we're really very excited. We've got a very strong that we're taking to Paris, a very strong team that we're taking to Paris, and we will be announcing that team now in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we're looking forward to it. And the only thing I can say, the athletes are looking forward to representing their country. Our hashtag for Paris is doing it for my country. We come.
Then in tennis, Rafa Nadal has confirmed that he will play this week's Barcelona Open in what will be the Spaniard's first tournament since January. The 37-year-old withdrew from last week's Monte Carlo Masters, saying that his body was not ready for competition and he's hoping to compete at the Roland Garros in May, where he's a record 14-time champion. Now, with his return, Nadal says that he wants to enjoy every moment of what he expects to be the last year of his career. Sadly so. In football, Everton have officially lodged an appeal against their 2-point deduction for a second breach of the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. Now, the appeal hearing over the second points deduction is expected to take place in the next couple of weeks. There's some Varsity Cup action today in the first semi-finals. Matis host UFS Shimlas at the Danny Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch, while NWU Eagles entertain UCT at the Fanny Du Toit Sports Ground. Then French President Emmanuel Macron says that the Paris Olympics opening ceremony could move from the River Seine to the National Stadium in the event of a security threat. Macron says that instead of teams sailing down the river, the ceremony could be limited to the stadium building across the river from Eiffel Tower, or even move to the Stade de France. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, we're going to talk about other things and maybe more sport. Well, not maybe, we will do other sport tomorrow, of course, you know that, right? 3:30, 4:30 and around 5:30 with Tumi. We also talk money, of course, and we'll take your calls. You can, again, many people commenting about where they are in the country and where they are in the world. There's a message I'm listening from Austria. Is it Austria? Australia? Either way, fantastic that you're doing that. So where are you listening from? What's your name? Perhaps what you do as well. Wherever you are you listening online? Are you listening on radio? Because things certainly have changed, right? Not too sure where Jimmy Moya is listening from. Either way, he's also hosting the show coming up after 6. And to set us up for all of that, let's get to him first of all with the Money Web Market Update. Hi, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. I'm listening in from the studio that's just nearby the Auckland Park studio. So we've got a studio in Houghton that's not too far from the Auckland Park studio. And it allows me to be between two studios in the event that we go through things like load shedding in the wonderful country that is ours. And on the show today, we do have a couple of developments. We are looking at the cruise space. We're looking at the market for cruise liners. We've seen recently that one of MSC's largest cruise ships, in fact, the largest one to dock in South Africa, recently docked in the port in Durban. We're going to dig into that with MSC, just get an understanding of what's happening with the cruise ships given the recent developments in and around the Red Sea. And we're also going to be taking a look at the AGOA agreement. It looks as though for now South Africa may have potentially avoided being removed from the AGOA agreement with the United States. We're going to dig into that and try and unpack what that means for our trade relationships with the United States, especially amid the ongoing tensions globally. And then we've got a conversation with Tiger Brands. They've announced that they're investing 300 million rand into a new peanut butter manufacturing facility. We're going to speak to them, try and unpack why they're investing that much at this stage, and just understand where the money's going to go to. And then because it's Monday, we've got a Personal Finance Monday feature. We are looking at the costs of owning a vehicle. So the costs beyond just purchasing the vehicle, but what you need to know around things like maintenance and insurance and fuel and all of those other things that come with actually owning and maintaining a vehicle. But before we get to that, it looks like the markets have had quite a rough day and a rough start to the week, and Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on those markets for us. He joins me now to just do a quick summary and recap of those markets. Good afternoon, Henku. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets for us. The Rand back above 19 Rand, and it looks as though it wasn't the greatest day on the local equities front.
Absolutely, Jimmy. You're absolutely right. Good evening to you and to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, and strangely enough, local markets in the red today, basically everything on the negative side of things today, except for US markets and European stocks. They're trading in the green, not by much, but the US markets at this stage about 0.2% stronger, and European stocks finished about 0.4% stronger at the end of their day. But then unfortunately the JSE lost 1% today, and it finished at a lower level of 74,519 points. The industrial index was 0.7% down. The financial index finished 0.1% weaker, and then that resources index decided to lose 3.3% today. Some of the companies that contributed towards that resources index finishing a lot lower today were Goldfields, which lost 4.5%. We also see Naspers 1.5% weaker, and Anglo finishing 1% down. But Richmond is one of the largest companies on the JSE, which finished on the positive side today and gained 2.1%. Other companies that gave strong performances today were Barloworld. Barloworld gained 10.5%. Then we also see South 32, 3.5% stronger. Zogo Sun as well as Quilter, they each finished 2.2% up. And Netcare, AVI and Aspen each gained 2% at the end of the day. Then again on the red side, on the negative side, Implats lost 7.5%, followed by DRD Gold finishing 7.2% weaker. There's also Harmony as well as Telkom. They each lost 5.5%. And then Sibanye Stillwater as well as Anglo Gold, they finished today 5% down. On the commodities market, the price of gold slightly lower today, now trading at $2,345 an ounce. Silver is sitting at $28.50. Platinum $963, and palladium $1,040 an ounce. The price of Brent crude now $89.30 a barrel. And like you said, Jimmy, you'll pay more than 19 Rand now again for the US dollar, sitting at 19 Rand and 5 cents to that US dollar. Then 23 Rand 70 to the pound, 20 Rand and 23 cents to the euro, and 12 Rand 28 to the Australian dollar. Bitcoin is something that's pulling a bit down and drawing a bit back, and now sitting at a lower level of $64,000, and that is 1,250,000 Rand, but still very high. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. I'd imagine the Barloworld Sends statement around that cautionary that they put out this morning had something to do with that share price surging, but we'll dig into that and other stories when we come back a little later on. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Absolutely, and we will not miss it. 6 o'clock, you shouldn't miss it as well. Absolutely. Okay, we're going to pick out some voice notes as well. I'll tell you what, we're also going to look at a developing story that's happening in Mpumalanga around teachers and learning being disrupted in several schools around the Kamasoi area. So just hold that thought for the moment, because there's some callers. Let's get to Eunice from Joburg. Hi, Eunice. Eunice, hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can. Welcome to the National Pulse.
Thanks, Ashraf. Ashraf, I want to talk about this Iran strike on Israel.
Yeah.
What has happened here is that, for the first time, Iran has shattered this myth of Israeli invincibility. For all along we've been hearing that Israel will crush anyone around them, and this has been shattered. Now, this first of all, like on your news, you had the British diplomat who's castigating Iran, but very conveniently forgets that it was Israel themselves who 2 weeks ago who bombed the consulate in Syria. And that is where the actual problem, that direct problem happened with Iran. Now, with all these missiles that went through, obviously Israel's got the Iron Dome system there. But if you follow Scott Ritter, for example, and where he clearly says that, the Israelis now have conveniently banned media from 2 air bases. The Nevatim air base, which Iran sent through a hypersonic missile there and has destroyed that air base. That's where the F-35 airplanes are kept there. And the other air base as well that has been attacked. So, with all the strength of the Iron Dome and everything, obviously they had to send in loads of drones and Iron Dome missiles there to bypass them. And for the first time, Israel is now on the back foot here.
So just two things very quickly on that one there, right? One is you spoke about it shattered the myth, right? Let me understand this. I know missiles were sent. I know there's the Iron Dome. It's not like Israel has been destroyed, isn't it? It still exists.
No, it's not destroyed. But they've always had this upper hand that they can flatten anyone at any time, what they've been doing. And they've been doing that to the likes of Lebanon, which is nearby them. They've been doing that to Syria, which is a sovereign country as well, all along. Israel themselves have been assassinating Iranian nuclear scientists for the last few years, if you could recall, in covert operations. Mm-hmm. So they act with impunity, and now, for the first time, this myth has been shattered. But obviously, Ashraf, knowing that there's no border between Israel and Iran. So, in other words, the Iranians now had to sort of get permission from other countries like Jordan. And obviously Jordan and the surrounding Arab countries, which a lot of them are puppets of the U.S., they're down some missiles that were over the airspace.
Yes, we know about that. In fact, we had a good chat with Tembisa Fakode early on, and perhaps listen to that chat again.
I think, Ashraf, if you can get George Galloway or Scott Ritter on, you'd actually get another side of the story.
Okay, point taken.
The main point is, why have the Israelis banned media from going to these 2 air bases?
Okay, you just quick one, point noted there, quick one. Do you think, I know what the British have said, what do you think? Are the Iranians within their rights to attack the Israelis as they've done?
If it's a tit for tat, and that's exactly what happened to their consulate in Syria. They were attacked blatantly, so they have a right to respond.
Okay, got that. Eunice from Joburg, thanks for that call. Certainly should get you thinking about that too, right? Talking about national pulse, global pulse as well. Right, there's a couple of WhatsApps that are really interesting to listen to.
Yeah, Mr. Ashraf, you must come to Kimberley, man. Like the gentleman said, there's a growing community speaking a different language in that area, but the school does not compromise. I can give you the name. It's Diamantfeld War School. Yeah, I know. That's cool. It's Afrikaans or the highway.
Diamantfeld Hoërskool. Afrikaans or the highway. Okay? Noted. Let's get another WhatsApp.
In response to AfriForum saying that Afrikaans should be maintained in the schools that do currently have Afrikaans as a medium or as a language, my argument would be that we need to also remember the extent to which we live around the schools that we go to. And by keeping Afrikaans a medium of education or keeping Afrikaans a language at a school, you also, in essence, gatekeeping that community for people who want to go to Afrikaans medium schools, which is why in certain areas in the country there are still Afrikaans schools, and the majority of learners in those Afrikaans schools are white Afrikaans children. And for them to go to those schools, they need to live in the area of the school. which again is gatekeeping that community to maintain its whiteness in essence.
Okay, another thought. Anybody from the Cape, from the Western Cape, who was not white but Afrikaans speaking, and how this may affect you? Here's another voice note.
Hi, Ashraf. I thank you for coming back. I'm listening to you from Vienna in Austria.
Oh, okay. Vienna in Austria. Delighted. Thank you so much. And that's really a nice message from you. I much appreciated indeed. You didn't give me your name, but glad that you're listening indeed. Okay. Right. I'll tell you what. Let's get to a developing story around a shutdown of schools in the Kamasoyi area. That's between Hazy View and White River. Now, if you know your geography, that's areas just outside the Kruger Park, I would think, in Mpumalanga. So my guest is Mtobisi Nkalipi, who's the SABC journalist there in Mpumalanga. Appreciate your time, Mtobisi. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. All right, set the scene for us. What's happened here?
Here in Kamasoyi, the teachers who are affiliated to different unions, labor unions, the How, Satu, and Natu, they embarked on a protest action. They are saying that they are concerned with safety in schools. This protest action was triggered by an incident that occurred in one of the schools known as Jerusalem last week, where criminals entered the school by cutting a fence, and then they allegedly assaulted pupils there before robbing teachers of their belongings, such as cell phones, and then they took one of the vehicles and fled the scene. However, the vehicle was later recovered.
So the issue at this point is, in fact, an issue around criminal activity that's encroached onto schools, as you've just mentioned, and clearly an issue of the schools and their teachers and the learners not being protected, yeah?
That is what they are complaining about, and they are saying that this is not the first incident. We remember that even last year, similar incident occurred in fact, many schools around the Marite area, where teachers were robbed of their cell phones, tablets, money, and they even took food that is provided by government through the school nutrition program. So there were several memorandum of grievances that were forwarded to the Department of Education and also the police. So they are saying now they want the MEC of Education, Wanakele Machuba, and also the MEC for Safety, Security and Liaison, and the police, provincial police commissioner to intervene. That's why they're saying that they're not going back to work until this matter is resolved, because it's not the first time that teachers and learners are attacked while on school.
Okay, so they're not going back to work. So how many schools are affected?
There are many schools, although I cannot say at the moment how many schools are affected by the fact that the teachers have down tools. But they said all the schools around the Kamasoyi area, teachers have decided to down tools, and they are going to be part of this protest action. And what they are saying is that if their demands are not met, they are going to close all the schools in the low-file region. They can even go as far as closing schools in the province, because they want this issue to be taken seriously. NATU is also saying that they want the department to ensure that surveillance cameras are installed in schools, and also they want the security guards to be provided with firearms, because the security guards who are guarding schools do not have firearms. That's what.
What has been the reaction of parents? Have you been able to get that reaction?
Parents are concerned, are also concerned that their kids are not safe while at school, but also they are concerned now that there is this protest action, and now it means that their kids are now going to are disrupted, in fact, as the teaching and learning is not taking place. So they're falling behind in their studies. So they also want to see this matter resolved as soon as possible.
And what about the Education MEC?
Well, the department, we spoke to the spokesperson for the Education Department, who said that there is a meeting that is scheduled to take place tomorrow between the MEC for Education and also the representative of the unions. He says that they are taking this matter seriously as well. However, on the issue of security guards being provided with firearms, he said as the department, they don't think that that is a good idea, because when these security guards are provided with firearms, they also become targets, because some of these criminals, they will want to come and rob them of these firearms. So what they're going to do is to sit down with the representative of the unions, and also they are going to come up with programs where they are going to engage communities, because some of these criminals live around the same communities where the incidents take place. So they are going to engage them and ensure that they deal with this matter.
Well, I mean, besides, teachers and learners being without now their mobile phones or money or whatever they've been robbed of, I think the psychological impact, the trauma of being attacked in a school, both for teachers and learners, I mean, that is hugely traumatic. I mean, is that being addressed?
That is another thing that is raised by the labor unions, to say that they are being affected, teachers. Hence, they want the Department of Education to come up with a program as to what is that they're going to do and how are they going to assist children or pupils, and also the teachers who are affected psychologically because of such incidents.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell us before I let you go?
It's only that we will wait tomorrow to hear the outcome of that meeting. Then we will know the way forward, because they have threatened that the unions that they are not going back to work if the matter is not addressed.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Mtobisi Nkalipi, who's the SABC journalist in Mpumalanga. Another worrying story, and this happens all too often, where schools, I mean, we have a national crime problem. You can say what we want about it. There's just no nice way to say it. It's just true. So that's the one thing. And then it filters down into schools, and it's happening far too often. So that's just, well, it's horrific. So is the response by the teachers to effectively down tools the right approach to get what they want, which is safer schools? You may want to WhatsApp, text, or voice note. Maybe text quicker because we're running out of time. Maybe the better way to do it is somebody else saying the Bella bill, just the Bella bill, thinking about the old Wombats, right? The Bella bill is planned to take away powers from the SGBs. It must not be signed into law. I wish you'd give me your name, because sometimes people are WhatsApping or texting and you're not giving us a name. So I know you, but I don't know you, if you get my point. I certainly know Hassan Lorgat. He wants to comment on languages in school. Hi, Hassan.
Hi, there were 2 points, Ashraf, rather briefly. One of these is about big tech and their role in control and surveillance of people generally. Most repressive governments are using that. And Google recently has been accused of using facial recognition in Gaza and all that stuff. So I really think that when you get our guys in to talk about tech, to really talk about who controls cloud, because I believe it's about 4 companies, which includes Amazon and others, about controlling about 70% of cloud. And what does it do for democracy, and what does it do for our security? The issue about Afrikaans I wanted to raise was simply that in the township I live in, is that people a few years ago changed from other languages that they were trying, isiZulu, I don't know whether it was Hindi or whatever, to change to Afrikaans because the syllabus, everything was organized there for them, not because they desired to learn it. Of course, ons is ook tweetalig, but I think what has happened really is that AfriForum and others have to take note that Afrikaans has come into many schools, black schools, formerly black schools, that and other languages have not been promoted. So government has to take blame, but this lobbying has been highly effective anyhow.
What do you think is the solution to this, Hassan?
Well, I think that we need to invest in indigenous languages so that people can, and we can talk about nation building. It's part of the law. And I really think that Afrikaans and English were preferred when we were younger. And now the other languages are not growing. And if we don't use them in science, mathematics, and elsewhere, and they don't become languages of power, they will not be used.
Sober thoughts, true, and worrisome at the same time, to say, how can it be that 30 years into democracy, we've not been able to move one step around the issues of, mathematics and sciences being taught in African languages to make it mainstream to the point that it's clearly not at this point in time. Hassan Logad, appreciate your call. Thank you. Certainly got us thinking and how this impacts on the national pulse. Definitely does. Okay, there's maybe time for a couple of more voice notes, I think, before we wrap up. But love the fact that I think there's another message from someone from Khayelitsha, listening in Khayelitsha as well. So great that they're listening from the radio. That's from Impo. When you do message, do give your name, okay? Afrikaans should definitely not be compulsory as a second language. Simply make it one language, like English, okay? And then Heinz saying, the last time I checked, the constitutional for the teaching in one of the 12 languages. Okay, and then also talking about sign language as one of those two. I want to check if there's another voice note. I think if not, we'll read some of the others. But let me tell you this as well. Okay, while we're at it. Certainly value your feedback in terms of what we're doing on this show as part of the National Pulse. I mean, today is day 9 that I'm hosting the show. So any thoughts that you have in terms of the content we've got and the way it's being put together, certainly would value your input. There's maybe time for, and you can WhatsApp, you can text or voice note us. There's maybe time for one quick voice note we can take.
Hi, Ashraf. I thank you for coming back. I'm listening to you from Vienna in Austria.
We've played again. That's like Bafana. I've got to say it twice. No. But okay, certainly got that one. Thank you very much and appreciate it from Austria. So there you are. You're getting listeners listening from around not just the country, but around the world. And I want to get a sense of encouraging you to tell me where you are from. Certainly give me your name as well so I know exactly where you are coming from, wherever you are. And not just listening on traditional radio, but certainly listening watching via YouTube, SAFM Radio, the account on the Twitter account and the X platform, streams out in video form as well as on audio. So you have many of those options. And then you know about the SABC Plus app as well. So you have all those issues, which means nowadays, even if you're busy, as part of your background sound, you can listen in to this show and all the shows on SAFM. We'll do it again tomorrow. It's 6 o'clock. Time for the news.
The IEC responds to a Rise South Africa's court case in an issue of funds for the Mayua murder accused. Good evening to you.